Tom Chittenden has arrived, so we're just
This
missing Megan.
conference will now be recorded.
All right, so I would like to call to order the South Burlington City Council meeting of Monday, May 18th, 2020. And note that we have, I believe, 4 guests online, and all but Megan Emery have from the council are in attendance. So we will begin. First item is the agenda review. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in order of agenda items? Hearing or seeing none. Move on to item 2, comments and questions from the public not related to the agenda. Are there any?
Yes, this is Michael Mittag. I have 2. I understand that there was recently an executive session on the Earth Economics Report, but I don't know what transpired and whether, when you came out of the executive session, any decisions had been made. Now, they might appear in future minutes, but I haven't seen anything yet. That's my first question.
Okay.
And the second one is a more general. It has to do with the several reports that have been commissioned during interim zoning. The Earth Economics being one of them, Open Space Committee report being another, and the John Stewart's report being a third. I'm asking what the council plans to do with these reports with respect to guiding the Planning Commission as to how to use them in developing LDRs or city policy.
Okay, so the question is how shall we use these reports going forward with LDRs for
and how you the Planning Commission to use them in some regulatory manner, regulatory fashion.
Well, I think all the reports are available to the Planning Commission to help guide them with their development or application of them in the LDRs that they're working on.
Okay, but they're not required to act on the recommendations in any of these reports, or are they? As a planning commissioner, I'm sort of trying to get a sense of how we use them. The Planning Commission could try to incorporate the recommendations into its work, or it could, in theory, decide to not take them into account at all. So there's a wide range between those 2 extremes. I don't think. Well, I don't want to waste the council's time on a discussion about this now, but I'd welcome some guidance coming from the council subsequent to this city council meeting, because you have a long agenda and I don't want to take up that much time.
Okay, well, I thank you, and we can add these to future agendas for discussion and potentially action.
Thank you.
Okay, Tom Chittenden is asking everyone to self-mute when not speaking. I'm getting feedback on my line, that's for sure. Megan has arrived, and James Lees has also joined us. Are there any other comments and questions from the public not related to the agenda?
Yes.
Jim Lees.
Hello, my name is James Lees. I live in South Burlington. I'd just like to report on the results of some efforts that may become successful to get a noise monitoring and tracking system for airport noise installed through a grant, an FAA grant. We've had some communication with the FAA and today and last Friday, and we found out today that the NCP, the Noise Compatibility Program studies in 1990 and 2008 all requested noise monitoring and tracking to be installed at our airport. So there is a basis, since it's in the NCP, for the Burlington Airport to submit a grant request, and it could be up to $1 million for this kind of noise monitoring and tracking systems that have been installed at other airports around the country and around the world. We looked in particular at the Westchester Airport, which is an airport which is about the same size as the Burlington Airport, and they have a very nice noise monitoring and tracking system for the commercial aircraft that fly from that airport. But we have much, much, much louder aircraft. It's so much louder. We had a noise test conducted by an individual named Scott Decker, who lives in South Burlington and who has this kind of equipment to actually measure it. He went out to the area around Pizza Putt in South Burlington and measured 124 decibels, averaged over half-second interval. He also measured a peak noise level of 129 decibels. Now, these numbers are very significant because the Air Force says that at 120 decibels, which is less than he measured, that's the threshold of pain. So you can be injured, you can be in pain at a lesser noise level than in a public street in South Burlington. And the 120 and the 130 decibels, the Air Force says in the environmental impact statement, is enough so that you can have immediate and permanent hearing damage. That means one exposure is enough to damage your hearing. Now, the Air Force.
So,
CIS,
Jimmy, so your point is that you have gotten some positive feedback about potentially receiving or having the airport apply for a grant to install the sound monitoring system.
That's correct. The airport really can make the application. Now, the problem is that application must be submitted by the deadline, which was extended because of COVID-19 to the middle of June. So we have about 3 weeks for the airport to be encouraged to get that application submitted. Otherwise, we have to wait a whole nother year to get that installed. And it's going to take time for the installation and so on. So what we'd like, and this report is being given also in Winooski and I think in Burlington as well tonight, because there are meetings in all 3 cities. So what we'd like to have is perhaps, it's not on the agenda, it's not something the council can act upon, but at least individual council members can encourage the airport director and the assistant director to go ahead and submit that request. And I'm hoping that, when we talked to them a couple of weeks ago, they said, well, they couldn't do it because it wasn't in the noise compatibility study. But now we've got an email, which I'll share with you in a few minutes, from the FAA. And you can see right in the NCP itself that noise measurement and tracking was in there. And I'm not sure why the airport director would say otherwise. But anyway, the FAA has said, yes, definitely, you can apply. And so now the question is, can they get that application in by the deadline in 3 weeks? We think they should be able to, because these kinds of things have been implemented at other airports. And we could even get their requests, their applications, because they're probably available online, they're public documents, and we can just massage it a little bit and submit and get that $1 million worth of noise monitoring and tracking equipment installed. And there are companies that do a turnkey application, so I'm hoping that our city councilors will go ahead. I don't think there should be any controversy about getting the data. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Megan?
Yeah, thank you, Helen. I just wanted to say that from reports that I've received, the airport has sent out a request for quotes on noise monitoring equipment. I don't know.
No, they haven't. They have not. What they've sent out requests for is noise mitigation, which is very different. So as part of noise mitigation, there has to be.
Let Megan finish. She may have some different information than you.
Okay.
Yeah, it was reported in a journal where they sent out the actual request, and I'm happy to share this information. It's public information, and I think it's important to know the 3-week lag between now and the deadline. I don't know, Helen, if there's something we can do, but from what I have seen with my own eyes, the airport has actually put out there a request for some quotes on noise monitoring equipment.
Okay, I can follow up with Jean. If you'll share that report or that document with me, I'll share it with Jean tomorrow and find out.
Very good. I will do that.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Any other comments or questions from the public not related to the agenda? So seeing none, we'll move on to item 3, announcements, and the city manager's report. Are there any announcements? Why don't I start? Megan, do you have any? Yes.
Yes. Last Tuesday, a group of residents from Queen City Park, they held a meeting with Justin Worthley of Burton, and I was contacted by 2 of those residents and asked to join them. So I attended just to listen. I attended the end of the meeting due to a meeting I had for work. But I just wanted people to know that from what I heard, it seems that Burton has full intention to respect the agreement that we signed. So I was just wanting to report that back to the city council. The level of concern among those residents remains very high, and so they will be very eager to work with some understanding of what the city's position is on this moving forward.
Great, thank you. Tom, do you have any announcements? No? Dave? Kaufman? No? Tim?
No, sorry, nothing to report.
Okay. I have one. We did have a special, well, it was an executive meeting, I guess. Well, no, but then we added, it was a review of sorts of the director of the airport, and he was recommended with having the skills and ability to continue to lead the airport. Okay, so nobody else? Then we'll go to the city manager. Kevin, is he still with us?
Good morning. Hi,
oh, there he is, right in the middle. Sorry.
Takes a while for my computer to respond to come off the mute thing, but just a couple of things tonight. I just wanted to report in. Right now we're at 41 of our employees who are furloughed. We notified them last week that the furlough would extend to at least get my months mixed up, July 3rd, with the possibility that the extension could go as late as July 30th. As you know, most of our employees are still working part-time. So there are very few of them that are completely furloughed, in other words, for the entire 40 hours. Of course, they are all subject to callback by their managers in case they're needed. But for now, we're at 41. As you know, also that the library is now open for curbside service. They are not, none of the city facilities are going to be open for the time being, but we are providing curbside service to people. And we're also providing things like some computer support. And Jennifer's got a seed program that she does this time of year that's ongoing for people to pick up curbside. But all city buildings continue to be closed. Donna is allowing people to come in and do title searches on an appointment basis and one at a time. We really can't accommodate more than one person in her small office and keep the social distancing requirements. But besides that, all other city buildings continue to be closed for the time being. I am pleased to let you know that all of our team is asymptomatic. We had a concern about one police officer that came out negative. And so our entire team, as far as we know right now, is asymptomatic. And that includes all of our first responders and water quality division. So we're very, very pleased about that. We have received notification from the state Department of Emergency Management that we will be receiving at the Holiday Inn up to 140 residents starting on this Friday. This cohort of people are not COVID-19 positive. These are folks who had been in shelters during the winter months and now are outside of shelters and would in many cases would be homeless. The shelters are unable to re-accommodate them because of the tightness of the quarters. And so the state has determined that the very best way to serve these folks, who again are not COVID positive, but they're in many cases homeless, would be in a hotel where social distancing can be easier accomplished. There will be support on site for these residents. Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity will be managing. And there will be various types of services provided on site. And so when this is totally filled, it will be about 140 residents who will be there. And the indications we've gotten from the state is this could extend into or through September. And so this will be a long-term residency engagement for these folks. Our first responders have all been briefed in on this, and contact information is being shared and so on and so forth, and we will coordinate with CVOEO. But this is going to be an additional demand on some of our services. Anyway, that's all I got right now, Helen.
Okay, thank you. I have a quick question. Do you have any plans to encourage the staff to take advantage of the free testing without symptoms that the state is offering? Is that an advantage for us? I keep wondering whether I should or not. I go back and forth.
I guess my quick answer to that would be, my preference would be to wait until the state has an approved antibody test to try to determine which of our employees may have some resistance to the virus, and so that we can deploy them more public forward. If we know certain police officers or firefighters have had the virus and have the antibodies, it may provide some protection. As far as the virus itself, we're assuming that if people are feeling they have the symptoms, that now the tests are available, they will go get one. I will say this, we're pushing Marathon very hard to get these both tests lined up, and so that we could possibly open our employee clinic earlier for short periods of time just to do the tests. But the specific answer to your question, Helen, is no, we have not encouraged them at this point.
Okay, thank you. Tim?
Yes, Kevin, how much capacity does Public Works have to fill some potholes?
They have the capacity to deal with dangerous potholes. They do, absolutely. Justin's working with about between a third and a half of his staff on any given day. But where there are dangerous potholes, we can certainly get people out to fix them. We're not able to do rough parts of a road right now, but dangerous potholes. So if you have one, Tim, shoot me an email and I'll send it over to Justin. They're out there. We know.
Thank you.
Okay,
Some of
thank
them
you.
have fish in them.
I would like just to make one brief comment. And that is that, as we're all aware, there's been lots of conversation on Front Porch Forum and letters to the editor about the different opinions between the city council and the DRB about continuing to meet during this pandemic. And clearly they have every right to and are doing just that. So I want to make it very clear that we can agree to disagree, but that does not in any way suggest that anyone on the council is not appreciative and considered their work very important. And they're volunteers, and we're not really volunteers. We get elected to do this, but it is sort of like volunteer work. We appreciate that, and it's very, very important to our city to have people willing to make that time commitment, and the DRB in particular, like the Planning Commission and the council. They have to do a lot of prep work before their meetings, and they do an excellent job. We can disagree on an issue, but that doesn't mean that we don't appreciate their work. And, you know, I just want to put it out there officially that we appreciate all they do. And in a democracy, we appreciate differences of opinion. So I just want to make that very clear, and I hope we can move on with that and continue to work together in a way that is helpful to our community. Megan?
Yes, I just wanted to add my voice to yours, Helen, since I think it's important that the council also speak in unison and with our multi-voices. And I just wanted to say that I heartily agree with you. I think that differences of opinion are bound to occur, and that's because we all care very much. And I think that we have to make it clear that, you know, in spite of differences that might lead us to, you know, say things that others, you know, could see as, oh, I can see a conflict. I think that we have to make it very clear that conflict does not mean that we stand still. That we have to respect one another's just our charges, and also respect the hierarchy. And as we all know, and as we've been advised, and we've advised the public, perhaps individuals on the council, as we've been having discussions with members of the public, the DRB is an independent, or quasi-judicial body, and we have no reason, to impede on work that they consider to be, doable. And I also want to say that, having read the responses and reading in particular that city employees are delivering materials to members of the public, eager to see what the DRB is looking at, I think that shows that our staff and the committee is supportive of that, is really doing all that they can in order to meet the needs for public notification. And this is, yes, a very trying time, but I just wanted that to be noted by the council as well, that the staff is really doing its best to meet the needs in order for information to be distributed. So I just wanted to add my voice to Helen's. Thank you, Helen.
Great. Thank you. I'll now move on to the item 4, the consent agenda. There are 2 items: consider and sign the disbursements, and the second, ratification of the council vote taken on May 4th to approve authorization for the city manager to submit an application to the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank for voter authorized debt related to improvements at 180 Market Street. I would entertain a motion. Megan, are you moving?
Yeah, I will move, but I had a question and
Okay, can we get a second? Tim, were you gonna second?
I'll second,
Or
but maybe Megan has my same question.
Okay, go ahead,
I don't know.
Megan.
Maybe not. I was just curious about the Lucky Puppies Dog Daycare and the yearly contract dues. Is that for dogs that go, that are impounded? I was just really curious about that. Or is that for our canine, crew with our police? This is just the first time I've seen Lucky Puppies Dog Daycare with a yearly contract.
I'll have to check on that, Megan. I think it's part of the services that we contract for, but exactly what those are, I'll get a qualifying statement from Chief Burke on that and send that off to all the council.
And I'm sorry for my email is not been in service today, so I would have emailed you early. So I'm sorry about that, Tom.
No worries.
Tim, do you have a different question?
Yeah, it's not the same as Megan's. So why do we have to ratify the vote that we took 2 weeks ago?
Kevin,
I missed an email. But
Kevin.
he's
Yes. The vote that was taken 2 weeks ago, Tim, was unwarned. And so to cure that issue, legislative bodies are able to properly warn at a subsequent meeting. And so this cures the fact that it was not warned at the prior meeting and allows that authorization to proceed.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? So we have a motion that's been made and seconded for approval of the consent agenda. I'll run the roll call. Megan?
Aye.
Tom? You can put a thumbs up, I guess. Aye, okay. We're Dave?
Aye.
And Tim?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, so it passes 5-0. The fifth item is review of the draft fiscal year 2021 school district budget. And I meant to add earlier that David Young has arrived, and as have Sandy Dooley. So David, you have the floor.
Great, and thank you guys. First is my apologies for not being a show up at I think a couple meetings ago when Kevin graciously put me on the agenda and never made it to my calendar very well. So I apologize and thank Kevin and Helen for getting me back on the agenda. So what I wanted to do is just again answer any questions that board member or that council members might have. I'll walk you through again, I think pretty much the same slides that we did before in the event that might trigger some additional questions. I know that you have Donna coming up, item 7, I think, to talk about the vote process. Yep. But again, that's we are a go for May 28th, the vote date for our second budget. And what I'd like to be able to do is just pull up my presentation. I don't know, Paul, if you're able to do that or you want me to do it.
David, what I'm going to do is have you be the presenter, and then you'll be able to pull it up. Okay, so just a moment.
All right, so David, you should now be able to share your screen.
Okay. So let me.
It's in the middle at the bottom. There's something that looks like a little computer monitor. If you move your mouse around.
Is that what you see now or not?
Not yet.
All right, where on the screen on
So
the?
if you move your mouse around, at the bottom of the screen, there should be 4 circles. One says
Yep.
mute yourself, one says camera,
Yep.
and the next one over is share your screen. So if you click that, it'll give you the choice to share something on your screen. And then
Okay.
select that which you want to do.
I guess I can share my whole big screen here. And pull this over. Can you see that, Paul?
Yep.
So let me get back to the top. It didn't start out very good there, did it? Okay, so again, I think for most of the council, this will be a little repetitive, but again, as I said, certainly happy to take questions, Helen and Kevin. But again, this budget from the last time I shared, I believe, has not changed. There are certainly things in the legislature that are being talked about quite a bit. And when we look at here, this next slide, I'll review some of the things that are being talked about. This is, again, what education finance, we call our budget workshop sheet. It is a requirement. These components are not something we make up, but are a requirement. And so I think you can see my cursor as well. Currently highlighted in yellow and red is where we are currently at 3.80. And again, that is the percentage increase. We were initially at 7.96. We've come down, obviously, by this amount. We're now at 3.80. We've taken close to 2 million off of that. The majority of those reductions are, a good majority are related to capital related needs and what I'll say deferments. We've also made some reductions in some staffing in different places. At the same time, it's important to note that we have increasing enrollment, which you'll see here on equalized pupils. We have an equalized pupil increase. This only is able to capture a 2-year rolling average. So although we're up more than the 40, we're up closer to 100, but you aren't able to capture it in a single year. That's part of the funding formula. So again, here is our net spending, our equalized pupils. You divide that brings you to the net. Oops, sorry about that. That brings you to the net spending per equalized pupils. You divide that by the property yield. Property yield is found up here in the right-hand corner. It has gone up slightly, and this is set by the state. We have heard that likely could go up, which would help the tax rate. Again, there's been just preliminary discussions related to that, but that's one of the things the legislature is looking at. So that's 5.91 on the tax rate. One of the things that you'll note here in the upper right is also the common level of appraisal. Currently, last year we were 93.28. Because homes have been selling in South Burlington higher than the appraised value, it's gone down, which continues to indicate, which is why the city's in a reappraisal. So that's an important contributor to the tax rate. And again, that's very different than what other communities are seeing. Again, a lot of good information in here. What does it mean on a $100,000 valued property? Of value, I should say, 95 additional dollars on the average condo. We continue to use the same numbers that we've used for average, just so that people can look at what was previous year to the current year, although we probably are due to match these up with what the city is using. Tom and Kevin, I know, have changed these slightly. And then the average home, $319 on the average home. So this is, again, what the current reality is in our budget. This is what will be going to the community. The net spending per equalized pupil at 4.35 will be in the ballot. Oh, geez, it goes fast. Sorry for that. Our tax rate history, given this particular scenario, again at 5.91 on the tax rate. 3.80 on the spending. If you come down this column, this is the average spending over the 5-year average and the 10-year average. Over here, the tax rate, here's a 5.91, our past history, a 5-year average of 9.9 and 2.31. You can definitely tell the volatility associated with the fluctuations between what you might say 0.85 and a minus. You might see an increase and a decrease. Again, this is the volatility in play with both the yield and the common level appraisal connected to the spend. These are our reductions that got us to this red line. So again, we've deferred some things, buses, stewardship, computer related stuff, some hourly staff we've reduced. As far as reduction and increases, again, we've been clear about with our non-union folks really trying to hold firm with no increases in pay, including my position. Special ed clerical positions, although we added this back in, part of this is because of the change in the way in which special education funding, it's going to continue to require what we have is clerks trying to make sure we do time studies. The future year that will drop out and we can probably see some savings in this particular area. Grounds, building support, our district safety. Again, we have 5 buildings. We've been trying to get to 6 state safety, campus safety people, but we just can't do it. And so we're going to make 2 reductions. We'll keep 2 people on, and we'll remote from one location the door cycles for those other schools. Not ideal, but again, we're in a tough situation. Our alumni development position away, a human resource position away, transportation director, we've had a retirement, not rehiring. ITE staff, again, we felt was needed, particularly given this. We made a reduction initially, but then put it back in, particularly connected to the remote learning for this year and probably into some of next year. Some help desk support, healthy school, guidance outreach, athletics, etc. So that's to the red line. That's what brought us to the reduction. Can I get rid of that thing? And then after this, there it goes. After the red line or below the red line are additional cuts that add additional help activities. Are drama and sports and those types of things are in the below the red line. Some teachers that then have to come out. This is to get us to level funding. And recently, according to contract, I needed to send out notices to our teachers. And so that had to happen by Friday the 15th. So 27 teachers received RIF notices. That means if the budget doesn't pass, we'll have to revert back to level funding. We might have one more vote. Again, that's in conversation we'll have to have with Donna and the Board of Civil Authorities. But if we can't get a budget passed, we'll fall back to the previous year budget, which for us is 100% of what we're in. But it means that we have to make reductions. So 27 teachers would need to be reduced. And again, they're embedded in this and some more. So all of these would be gone in level funding. And we'd have to cut a few more teachers to get to the 27, which I've done. That would, again, get us there. In addition, some teachers also had to receive notices that they could be displaced by a more senior teacher. So 15 of those notices went out. So those 15 teachers did not get contracts. So we have 3 groups: a group of teachers that got contracts, 27 teachers that got RIF notices, 15 teachers that didn't get a contract, but I got a letter from me. And again, I talked to all of these folks again personally. So all of this list and some additional teachers. What I wanted to do, again, I did this last time, and I'm sorry if I'm being redundant, but if we change back to the common level appraisal, in other words, let's assume that the home values had been selling at or about the appraised value of the previous year in 2020, and plan that for next year, 2021. So if those common level appraisal was the same, then it would have this effect on the tax rate. So from 591 down to 210. So my point here is you can see the volatility in the particular components of the common level of appraisal. Again, we didn't change the yield, just the CLA. Nothing changed on the expenditure. You can see then what happens at the 34 on the 100, 78, 113. Again, important for people to know. Again, part of our big pieces are that equalized pupil continuing to climb. We're up about 100 plus students. If that was the case, this is what would result. So tax rate at 210, you know, we dropped to 0.22 on a 5-year average, 1.75. Our spending, again, doesn't change because we haven't changed the spending. Then one more thing, again, just to highlight common level appraisal, which I know, you know, Todd LeBlanc and the city are up, moving, I think, what I understand pretty favorably to come closer to the 100% reappraisal on the CLA, or CLA to 100%. And what effect does that have? So same dollar on the spend, but then with the common level appraisal, it drops it to a minus 4.77. And then obviously has some effects on the tax rate, both 5 and 10 year. And then this is where we were the first time at the 11.22 and the 9.6. Again, a lot of this, yes, we had connected to some bonding. We also had some connections to trying to, again, be good stewards to the facilities and address some of those shortcomings which continue to grow, but we did not. And then here are the 591,380, where we are now, combined city and school on the 100,000. What's the add? City 16, 95 school, 38 city on the condo. And this actually does pick up the new condo value that the city's using, because we're using our shared sheet, 223 and 55 and 323 on that. So again, I'm hopeful that on the 28th we'll be able to pass. I think one of the things I should have paused there. Definitely what the sorry for the visual confusion here. One of the things that the legislature is looking at, of course, is this property yield. Changing the property yield, slightly increasing, also drops that. So they're looking at, we've gotten some advisement that might climb to 10,996. We're not yet sure. If that happens, then that drops that too. So again, where we are different than most is right in this equalized pupil number. We get the largest incoming class coming into 9th grade. We got the largest class sizes close coming into Rick Marcotte. We're close to 400 students at Rick Marcotte. Chamberlain's holding even, and Orchard's going to be over 400, 421 next year planned. So that's where I'm at. I'm happy to take questions. Again, I know Donna's going to go over a little bit more of the voting pathways, certainly encouraging early voting through absentee ballot, really good. But then we'll have the 3 sites will be up, and she's going to talk about that in a minute. So questions that you guys have?
Okay, are there any by the council members? Start with you. None? Oh, is your hand
No.
up, Megan? I can't tell. Okay. And then we
Can
had
I-
Donna Kindle has joined and Eric Silverman.
Can I ask Dave a question?
You absolutely may. David Kaufman.
Dave, are you there?
Yes,
Somewhere?
David, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm just curious, and I've got to be, very, very honest here. I hear people, I talk to neighbors, and what I still hear is there should be no increases this year because there are too many people out of work, losing money, not generating revenues, etc. I'm curious as to was there, and I think I asked this question once before, was there discussion with the faculty about level funding their pay for the coming year? I don't know what impact that would have, but I get the impression that might improve the situation. Did that discussion take place at all?
Well, as you know, David, collective bargaining is occurring now. It's occurring between our union support staff. It's occurring between the teachers, and it's occurring with the administrators. And I can tell you that I think both the board certainly is aware of the pressures and trying to do the very best that they can. We have a couple other things that are in play that are important. The statewide healthcare act that went into effect again statewide. That's to take effect January 1.
Right.
That adds about $28 million to the ed fund draw because of kind of the first dollar. It's a healthier program, so it adds some additional money. This was again negotiated at the state, so that is a load on the ed fund. That's part of the ed fund discrepancy. But in addition, obviously, yes, contracts are certainly there, and we as a district, have to prepare reasonably. I would say we don't put more money in there than we need, but we hope that we have enough money there for the board to be able to negotiate a contract. But yes, they're very aware of the pressures, and I think they're working hard to get the best possible contract. Yes.
How close are you to an agreement?
I think the administrative union, I think you'll hear some information on Wednesday night. We did warn it for action.
Okay, that was
So
just the administrative. Okay.
Well, so the administrators are on. They'll be on again. I don't exactly know what the outcome will be with the board, but that's up for action Wednesday night. The teachers do have a planned meeting coming up here in the next week and a half or so, and so do the support staff. So everybody's trying to, I think, be responsive. Again, I think a lot of folks would like it to move faster, but again, I think people are doing the best they can to try to get that together.
Thank you. Megan?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to respond to that I think that it is imperative that everybody think very carefully with regard to requests for salary increases, not only in the coming year, but perhaps longer. But I also wanted to say, just in response to David's question, that I think it's important that we not negotiate by voting this budget down. I think that is a sledgehammer approach. And I would really encourage the public to think very carefully about what is at stake and what we need to maintain as we move through this period. I mean, as families, we've had to individually think about, what we can do at this time financially, right? And that comes down to the list of essentials. And I would count the schools among those essentials. I certainly think that as an educator, David, you would agree that there is an intrinsic value to ensuring that our public education is, at least, maybe not, as full as some people would like, but not to hobble it. And I see that any no vote coming through here would hobble it. And so I really want us to be mindful that voting no is not a way to negotiate with the teachers. So.
Yes,
I
thank
think
you.
that's a good point, Megan. And all I was relaying was what I just pick up anecdotally as I talk with people. I would like to think I could hear more people speaking positively, but instead I hear people speaking not positively, and that's a concern.
I would hope that you would, perhaps help them walk through, where, the levers are and what levers perhaps are not the appropriate levers.
Well, my standard response is that if we don't have a quality education system in town, then that's going to negatively impact our property values and our entire South Burlington economy. And we don't want that to happen.
That's on point, David. I want to, again, I appreciate the feedback from council members. One of the things I'd be remiss not to say is, right now, we're in what I would say uncharted territory. Right now, we are hopeful that we'll get back to normal, but I cannot tell you how many hours we have been spending to determine possible options on a going forward basis in the city and schools in Vermont. Certainly we don't know. We are hoping, knock on wood, that we'll be back to normal, but we know that's probably unlikely. So if we need to operate at some different capacity, the staff that we have, we're going to need them. The other part is our students are going to need every bit of opportunity that we can provide them. We know that if we do not, provide them the things that they need, particularly on just certainly the academic, but the social and emotional support that's needed. What we do know, and not necessarily in this community, although I think, Kevin and Tom have eloquently talked about the need at the provider level, whether it's rescue or police, but what we see then, we'll see manifestation of additional sources needed either in the Chittenden County or Vermont. So again, this relates to trauma, it relates to, domestic violence and abuse. We see all of those things start to trigger up. And so it's really important from my perspective that we not short what we know is needed. Again, the complexity of our future, again, I'm really hopeful we'll be back, but we're trying to figure out how we can continue to exist in maybe a slightly different capacity, whether we have to run schools at 50% or 60%. And I'm going to need the staff to do it. I've already made reductions. And so I'm worried if we go any further. If we make the reductions to level funding and those 27 teachers, all of our class sizes climb considerably. We're up into the 30s in some classrooms. And that is problematic. Number one, the physical space for them is restricted. And so it would be very, very difficult. And our sports and activities, which are very important to our kids, I feel strongly when we talk about our ends, academic, disposition, personal development, and citizenship. A lot of those dispositions and personal development things come from, activities, whether it's a speech and debate, whether it's, on the athletic field, it's whether you win and I don't, and how I handle those things are hugely important to the dispositions that we want. And South Burlington, under your work and support, this community has certainly done a good job. And as I think some of you have indicated, there's a good reason why our CLA is coming down. People want to move here and they're willing to purchase houses above the appraised value. It's a little bothersome to me, however, that part of the triggers in that CLA play into the tax rate that I have to then try to explain, to the community, because they see it as, that 591 is tough. And why can't it be the 380 at minimum? But I have to explain to them it's a statewide taxation system. Other questions? Sorry about that.
Okay, are there any other questions from council members? How about the public? We have a number of public. Oh, Tim Barrett.
Good evening, David. Do you think you'll resume in the fall with in-person schooling in the school itself?
Boy, I hope so, Tim. But right now, again, we're listening to the governor and the Secretary of Education. I think a lot is going to be dependent upon the data and how we continue to, as we open up, what that means on the responses. What numbers? Again, we're kind of at the 10 number right now. I don't know if that will grow and then it might go down again. So I don't know. I always remain optimistic that we will, but I also, again, need to allocate some mental energy and options to figure out what if I can't. So I'm really hoping.
If you can't resume in the school in the fall, what sort of budget differential would that create for you in terms of lowering the cost of education in South Burlington?
Well, I wouldn't be able to lower the cost. Again, I got to get a budget passed. My hope is that it's this budget. If it's this budget, we're going to have to live within it, but it will mean that I'm going to have to figure out some variations on how to, operate a high school at 50% with maybe some kids on and some kids off campus. And, that's one thing at the high school level, but it's a very different thing at the elementary. I can't just send kids home. Otherwise, I'm not going to let moms and dads get back to work and guardians get back to work. So those are more complicated. And so we're going to need to figure out possibly some alternative spaces. Again, I hope this is all for naught, but we're going to have to figure out where can I, if I got to take, half of the population of a school and move them somewhere else, or alternate days or something, what am I going to do? Because again, it's not an option to just send them home, I don't believe.
Any other questions? Clearly, this is a real challenge for everyone. and I don't, I'm glad I'm not you, but I'm hopeful that we'll get through this appropriately. Tom Chittenden, did you want to say something or a question? No?
I have a question.
And who is
My
that?
name is Ariel Jensen Vargas.
We couldn't hear you, Tom.
My name is Ariel Jensen Vargas. Okay, so go ahead.
Ariel, go ahead.
Yeah, so my question is that if there's partial Zooming classrooms and or preparation of teaching materials onto virtual kind of platforms, there's nowhere in the budget for this kind of tech help to help the teachers move their materials onto the platforms and also for the students to be able to access these materials.
There is support. Where again, we have what we call information technology educators. We have 3 of them. We have one that supports Kristen Corsell that supports our elementaries, does an awesome job, and we've got one at the middle and the high school. And they, again, as like all of us, you know, as technology comes along, you get a little bit better. Some of our younger teachers are really good, but we have become better, and they have helped us in those capacities considerably. Now, that being said, there's nothing like having the opportunity to be able to be with, you know, with students and understand and to be able to witness their emotions and respond to their academic needs. Certainly, it's been a gift that we've had the opportunity to have devices for students. We made a decision about 10 years ago to start that way, and it's been really, really important. So we do have the support needed. That will certainly help us. It's certainly helping us now, but it will help us if we have to stay on some sort of a restricted capacity on a going forward basis as well.
Thank you. Tom, I think you had a question. We can't hear you. No.
You can type your question to me, Tom. In the chat bar if you want.
Okay, he said his mic isn't working, so please carry on. Okay. So we got 3 more minutes. Are there any other questions or last comments? All right, well, thank you very much, David. And most of us will be working the polls, so we'll be there.
Well,
Is
again,
my
thank
mic
you for,
working now?
Oh,
Yes.
okay, Tom,
Can you hear
go.
me now? Okay, great.
Yep.
Sorry. So really quickly, and I know we're trying to move along, I just wanted to say that connecting it to the University of Vermont, to Tim's question, we are looking at a lot of expenses, unexpected expenses, to be able to deliver a hybrid type of educational model. So it's not going to be cheaper, even if there is another extension of this remote delivery, because there are a lot of unexpected costs with technology support. And if we do go, which I'm expecting to, a hybrid model, as David Young was describing, that carries with it a ton of costs as well. So for whatever it's worth, and if this gets in the paper, thank you, Maddie, but I am definitely going to vote yes for this budget, yes for the kids. I have 3 kids and I'm married to a teacher, and David Young, I really hope the budget passes.
again, thank you, Helen, thank you, Council, for giving me the opportunity, and sorry for missing the last meeting. Thank you.
That's okay. All right, thank you. So moving on to item 6. Wait a minute. Oh, there. Okay, item 6, the public hearing on proposed inclusionary zoning amendment to the land development regulations, warned for 7:30. Our intention is to open and immediately continue to a future date. But prior to that, Sandy Dooley sent me several questions that I think make sense to have answered. They aren't content oriented, but they're really more process oriented. So if, well, actually, maybe we should do the warned meeting and then give Sandy the opportunity to ask those questions.
I move to open the public hearing on inclusionary zoning amendment of the land development regulations.
Second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye. You can raise your hand, I guess. You have to be on camera to do that. I see everybody's hand raised. Okay, so that's, oh, yep, okay. So we are in a public meeting or hearing rather, on the inclusionary zoning amendment to the LDRs. And I would entertain a motion to continue that to a future date. Do we have a date? We don't, do we?
Do we need a date for the motion?
I don't know if we need to set a date now or we do need to set a date, Paul?
Yeah.
You do need to set a date because the hearing is now open, so you have to continue it to a specific date that the public knows about.
June
So that's
15th?
gonna,
4 weeks?
In 4 weeks?
June 15th,
So that's
our
a-
regular meeting?
The June
you have
15th
another-
meeting is,
you'll have another public hearing that night on extending inclusionary zoning, or excuse me, on interim zoning. So you'll have 2 public hearings that night. You may want to extend until the first week in July, but it's up to you.
what's your
The
pleasure?
LDR the proposed LDR takes effect with this hearing right now, right?
Tim, this is Paul. The proposed bylaws took effect when it was warned in the newspaper, which was March 27th.
Okay.
From there,
thank you.
you've got 150 days during which it's in effect. So that's the day that you want to sort of keep in mind. Is so essentially 5 months from the end of March. So April,
That's
May,
August.
June, July, August. You would want to take action by that time. And that includes any sort of adjustments that you choose to make and rewarnings. So that would be my only caution about pushing it too far.
Well, in terms of dates that the governor proposes, to make changes, they tend to be not a sort of an arbitrary date, but like mid-month or the beginning of the month or the end of the month. Perhaps it would make sense to wait till July, the first week in July. And hopefully then we'll be able to meet in larger groups in person.
That date would be July 6th, Helen.
Is that amenable to everyone, or do you want to do it 4 weeks? I don't.
I will move that we continue the hearing on proposed inclusionary zoning amendments to the land development regulations to Monday, July 6th.
I will second that.
At
Okay,
7:30?
At 7:30. It's been seconded by David Kaufman. Is there any discussion? You ready for that vote? I'll do a roll. So Tim Barrett?
Aye.
Yes. Dave Kaufman?
Aye.
Megan Emery?
Aye.
And Tom Chittenden?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, so that passes 5-0. Now I'd like to give Sandy Dooley the opportunity to ask her 3 questions.
Can you hear me?
Just
Not well.
barely.
Just barely? Better? Is that better?
Yep.
Okay. I think Paul has answered one, and that was when was the last possible date of the 150-day period? So that's the end of August approximately. My other question was just whether any of the counselors have received to date any public comments on the regulations.
I've received several emails, which essentially are public because they went to my South Burlington address. Most were, I think I got one from you, Sandy, and John Simpson, and a few other people in favor. And I think I've had 1 or 2 that were had some concerns,
Are
but
they
that's all.
I think they're considered public comments. Is that right?
I think, well,
Well, my question was any comments that had been received if they were available to the public to review.
how do I go about that, Paul? Paul? Do I
Probably the
copy you
easiest
or
thing would
forward
be,
those emails? Pardon?
yeah, if you wanted to forward them to me, then I can either make them available upon request, or sometimes with larger hearings, we've put them together in a package and put them into the council packet for the date of the hearing. So that way the public gets it as the full set. So that we could do that. And given that it's extended out a little bit, we could probably also post it on our website so that folks had it. So.
Okay, I will do that. I'll go back in my emails. If anyone else has received, I think some of them were sent to all of us.
So I guess I would say if any other counselor has one that does not include Helen, to send it to me. If it includes Helen, we'll assume that I'm getting it from Helen.
Okay, will do.
Great.
And did you have a third question, Sandy?
It was just
Or-
related to the end date. So it's been answered. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you very much. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to come out of a public hearing.
No, you
Oh,
don't
no?
need to take that action. You've already continued the hearing.
Oh, okay, that's right. Okay,
Right,
thank you. All righty. So now we can move on to item 7, which is an update from South Burlington City Clerk Extraordinaire regarding plans for May 28th, the vote on the fiscal year 2021 school district budget. So take it away, Donna.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Donna Kinville, City Clerk. About 2 weeks ago, the Board of Civil Authority met and decided they heard a bunch of opportunities or options for holding the May 28th vote, from doing it as normal to doing a drive-in vote to doing every ballot sent to every voter. After some conversation, it was decided that we would heavily advertise early voting, mailed voting only, and then open all 3 polling locations from 7 to 7 for those residents who wanted to come to the polls on election day. So that is how we're proceeding. We have up until 7 days prior to the vote to actually change the polling location or how we vote. So we have a Board of Civil Authority meeting tomorrow night, which is our normal before an election meeting where we kind of have to approve presiding officers and some election training. So we'll have that conversation tomorrow night. I don't think anything will change, but you never know. Our options, if we do decide to change, would be just to reduce it down to 1 polling location instead of the 3, or to do a drive-through voting. But those are really our only options at this point. We have heavily advertised the early voting as requested by the BCA. So I've done 2 or 3 front porch forum postings. I know the school has been very good about posting things in the paper and getting things out to their parents and the public in general. It's been on our Facebook page and every social media that we have. And I have been directing people to their My Voter page. And to those residents who are out there who are listening, thank you very much for doing that. I would say probably 2/3 of the requests that we have come in through that My Voter page. So it really does free up staff time because it's all done by a computer. So it's not Donna typing in, Donna Kinville wants a ballot and she wants it mailed here and this is the ballot she wants. It takes a lot of time on our effort to do that, which is fine. But with staff being furloughed right now, it is definitely making it much more easy for us to process what we have. And we've had a lot. As of today, when I left the office this afternoon, we had 2,161 absentee ballots mailed out. Just to give you a comparison, that's only 30 less than we then voted in our office, and ballots that were mailed for the March primary and city election. So that was a high count to begin with. And then back in November 2018, the last time we had that big unpresidential November election, we did about 2,900. So we're going to be around there. We still have a good 4 more days of good heavy request ballots. After that, it gets kind of close to getting the ballots back, getting it mailed to them. received and then getting it back to us. So I'm expecting we're going to be under the 3,000 mark for early voting, which is great. I just want to put out there that you can mail the ballots back. They're just one single stamp, or City Hall has our night drop, and 24/7 that is open. So anybody who does not want to mail it or not positive that the mail will get it to us in time, please feel free to use that drop box, and it is a secure location, so we will get your ballots. So I don't know if there's any other questions that you had on the elections.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, this is Tim.
Go ahead,
There's a
Tim.
meeting tomorrow. There's a meeting tomorrow night. I thought it was the 21st.
We moved it because we wanted to make sure if there was, I am not expecting there to be a change in a polling location, or not look of how we do this, but the 21st, which is tomorrow night, or 19th, which is tomorrow night, gives us the ability to get the school board to make a change. So we needed that extra few days. So after I sent it out, I realized I should have backtracked it a little bit. So it's going to be tomorrow night,
Same
6
time?
o'clock.
Oh,
Yep.
6 o'clock.
We have to do a Zoom meeting because Paul's got the go-to. And just one other thing, we're trying to do everything that we can to protect our workers and our voters at the same time. So right now we have some KN95 masks. Al from IT has gotten us some of the face shields that we can wear as well. We're going to have gloves. We're going to have sanitizers everywhere. You've seen the markup for how we're going to actually do the polling locations. So we're going to have the 6 feet markers around. We're going to have the booth set 6 feet apart. Each voting booth has 4 voting stations in it. Only 1 station is going to be used. The other 3 will be taped off so that we make sure people aren't going to jump into another booth with someone else already voting. The one way of going in and out and down to, sorry, my doorbell's ringing, someone's going crazy. So one direction in and out of the polling location so that we don't have people crossing each other. So we're really trying everything we can. We're asking voters when they do come into the polls to please wear a mask. I'm not quite sure if we can mandate it, and that's a conversation we're going to have tomorrow night. If you'd like to, please bring your own pen. We will have pens there to use, but we will have them put somewhere else after, clean them before they're brought back out for somebody else. So we want to keep our voters safe. We want to keep our election workers safe. So anything we can do to be cautious of all of the things that we're doing is appreciated.
Donna, it's any type of pen, right? Doesn't have to be
Any
a felt pen. People have been asking
Nope.
questions about that. It's
Any pen,
The reader will read it.
anything but red, I think.
Okay, are there any other questions? I will note that Ted Lenski is joined. Any other questions? Well, I appreciate all your work, Donna. I know this has been a challenge, and it sounds as if some of your processes have paid off and are working well, so that's good. So I appreciate that, and we'll see you online tomorrow night, and then on Election Day.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great, thank you. I note Bill Shear has arrived, and we're moving on to perfect timing, Bill. We're at item 8, a request by Bill Shear for council support of certain zoning amendments related to property on Shelburne Road. And I think we all got an email that gave some background. I didn't get it till today, but I was somewhat familiar. So would you like to take us through or describe your concerns and what you're requesting and the language you're proposing?
Good evening. Yes, I'm talking about the Audi Acura dealership on Shelburne Road. We bought that business in 2010, and we were required to do a small addition to make it comply, which resulted in us losing our employee parking lot. And we went ahead with the project, but because of the particular site plan with 2 buildings on the north and south side and all the activities going on, you have a confusing traffic pattern. And now we have the employees parking in the middle of the customer area and the new car display and the service area. It's become more and more problematic. And I started talking to planning about it 7 years ago. And the conversations have gone on, and it always seems like there's something more important going on, and there a lot of times they are more important. I've had lengthy conversations, multiple conversations with Paul Connor, trying to just figure out a little zoning tweak. In my view, it's a no harm, no foul situation. I'm just trying to make the property functional and safe. I don't want somebody getting hit by a car because it's overly congested. We've moved 50, 60 cars off the lot to storage lots. So we've moved new cars off lot to clear space, but we're still subject to deliveries, customers that don't have appointments. And I think it's a dangerous situation. Anyway, this has gone on for 7 years. I ended up hiring a consultant to help me track the delays and try and get on the agenda. And we ended up writing our own proposal to modify the zoning and make this parking lot now legal. It's not visible from the road. It's not visible from Holmes Road, not visible from Shelburne Road. And it just makes the lot more functional and safe. Now we're in interim zoning, and they don't want to hear any applications, so I'm getting kind of kicked down the road again. It's like sitting in a restaurant watching waiters walk by for 7 years, and no one's at your table.
Are there any
This is-
comments or questions? Oh, yes.
Hi, this is Stephanie Clark. I work for Bill, and I sent you the email and the memo last week. I just wanted to chime in and just draw your attention to the ask tonight, which is really that we need City Council's help here because we haven't seemed to get through the regular channels the appropriate process. And so we've asked the Planning Commission, we've asked the Planning Director, we've asked the Zoning, the Planning Assistant Planning Director, and we just would really appreciate some support to take up this item. And I know that they do have interim zoning, but this was before that. It predated before interim zoning. It's happened, you know, and they said back in November to take it up if and when Planning Department had time. Well, that's 6 months ago now, and we did do the heavy lifting in the meantime of drafting it ourselves. So it really is just a yay or nay decision at this point, or a yay or nay with some feedback, because our intention was to be cooperative and figure out a solution, because we understand it can't just be for our own site. It needs to be more broad. So at this point, the ask is that there be a directive to the Planning Commission within a very short period of time to take this up, so that we're not just sitting at the table waiting for appetizers, as Bill put it.
Questions or, yes, Tim?
Yeah. So, I'm trying to remember. So Shearer Chevrolet is no longer Shearer, it's Key Chevrolet, is that correct?
Yeah, correct. We sold that business in last October.
Okay, so the current occupant is Key, but when it was Shearer Chevrolet, just for some background, there was some wetlands mitigation work that was done on the western side that was a fairly generous, not a donation, but from what I remember, there was some land that was given up for some wetland type work. Does anybody recall that? Is that true?
Oh,
That was a
stormwater.
Federal stormwater.
Stormwater, okay, all right.
Yeah.
So my next question is, it might be a stupid question because I used to be on the DRB, but why isn't this an issue with a DRB specific application? And why can't they grant you a waiver, or is it in excess of a waiver they can grant?
Well, a couple things. One, that this is up the street. This is at the Audi Acura, not for the Chevy, but this
Oh, I'm
is.
sorry. I thought I saw Chevrolet.
Nope, it should be Audi Acura.
Oh,
Up the street. So this
Oh,
is the
okay.
property that's across from the IDX
yeah.
property. And this does not conform. What we're asking for is to increase, to have a small increase in lot coverage because we're at capacity of lot coverage under the current zoning. So this is but we're talking about it on a site that has multiple structures within the A1 auto district that has frontage on multiple streets. So it's a very specific type of property because we're very bound by both of those streets, and to have buildings up on the street. There's a lot of things that have made it difficult to actually get enough parking and coverage, but still meet the other zoning regulations. It wouldn't qualify for a waiver, honestly. That waivers, to issue a waiver, or I'm sorry, a variance would be super strict, and a waiver just really wouldn't work. But we think that this amendment would get at those objectives, and the planning department didn't disagree with that, to change the zoning for, to make it more amenable for these types of special circumstances under this supplemental regulation.
But that property underwent a radical redevelopment back in like 2014 when they put the porte cochere on there, and they did add some more paving, I believe. This was not part of that particular activity, or this is something that happened later on?
Since then, yeah. This was a discovery since then that we really need to have more flexibility of that site to make it as dense as possible.
So the problem is the planning commission hasn't taken it up because it's an LDR change, and you're proposing that it only affect that C1 zoning areas. Is that correct?
Correct. We have submitted this to just be applicable to C1 auto district for properties with multiple structures with multiple street frontage. The planning commission hasn't rejected this idea ever. This has never been something that they've said they did not want to consider, that it was unreasonable. And the planning department agreed as well and said it makes sense to try to be more dense on this property because otherwise he's shuttling cars off and on the property. That adds to traffic, that adds to emissions. So it's never been rejected by anybody. It's just been a matter of finding the mechanism, writing the mechanism.
Stephanie, how many other properties? It's Dave Kaufman talking, and I talked with Bill about this back at the beginning of the year, and then the world fell apart, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess. But in fairness, this has been, as you say, kicking the can down the road for 7 years. We kind of got to get this resolved. How many properties might be involved in? I got two questions. One, how many properties might this impact with this minor change for C1 automotive?
Maximum of 2.
Who's the other one?
Maybe 2.
4. Right, you've got Chevrolet, Acura, and Goss Dodge, and Honda Toyota. So that's 5, right?
But only where multiple structures exist.
So that would be your deal.
They all have multiple structures.
No, I think Goss only has one.
Yeah.
No, they have a garage out back, and they have another structure as well. See, Goss Dodge was problematic about 5 years ago because they wanted to make a change, and if I remember correctly, they weren't willing to add to their stormwater pond to create extra capacity for the extra coverage that they were going to create, which was problematic for the state's initiative to try and increase stormwater, cleaning for especially for water going into Lake Champlain when you're that close too. Right. For my opinion, the planning commission does need to weigh in on this because there could be repercussions for the properties on both sides of Shelburne Road. I mean, first of all, you have to know exactly how many, businesses are affected. What's the maximum amount of stormwater excess that could be created from that? Do they have the capacity to treat that water? I mean, do you have the capacity to treat that water? Is that within your permit, that 10% increase?
Yep. Yeah, because this property was grandfathered when he bought the property years ago. We've actually been bringing the property, we're now under the maximum zoning the maximum zoning lot coverage, which is 70%. We're at that now, but we weren't always, because the property when he bought it was maxed out and the regulation wasn't there. So we brought it back and cut back on impervious. But you're right. I don't disagree with you that there are questions they should be asking to make sure, because we're looking at it from our property, and my firm tried to look at it from a zone wide, but there's things that planning needs to understand a little bit more. You know, they may understand and see a different subtlety or a nuance. And so I totally agree. They should look at it and make sure that it's not going to affect things adversely in other areas.
I'm just curious, how many square feet are you talking about?
How many square feet? I mean, we were talking about 5% or so. I don't have the square footage in front of me. Let me just pull that up.
About 60 by 140 would recreate 30 parking spaces with an aisle down the middle.
Yeah.
So it's 8,400 square feet or something under about a fifth of an acre.
Yeah, it's less than 10,000 square feet. I know that. Yep.
So it's about a fifth of an acre. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I have to defer to Tim because you're the expert from the DRB perspective. You know, from my somewhat simplistic perspective, this has been going on for a long while, and we should make something happen so that it can work more efficiently, and we can't keep just kicking the can down the road. So what can we do here? Paul, do you have any input on this? I don't know where you went.
Well, okay, there he comes. I just want to make
I'm here, Dave.
real quick.
Go ahead, Tom.
They're not actually asking us to weigh in on this. I always defer to Tim when it comes to DRB things there, but they're just asking for an answer. So all they're looking for is clarity. So whether or not the Planning Commission it does or doesn't support this action. So that seems like a reasonable request. And I recall different times. I don't know, Kevin, if you have something to say, but we have asked the Planning Commission to take up or to prioritize or to at least look at things that have come up over the ages.
We've tried.
Yeah, we've tried. Okay, fair enough. But Kevin, I don't know what your thoughts are. I didn't mean to cut you off, Paul, if you wanted to speak next, but I'd love to know why we can't just get this on a priority list so that the Planning Commission can weigh in on it and give them some clarity as to where the city's.
Go ahead, Paul.
Well, so I guess that the response here would just be that when Stephanie and Bill came to the Planning Commission around, I guess, end of November, which is, as they alluded to, about 6 months ago now, there was an idea that was floated and it had some traction. It was not this one, but it was an idea. And the commission's guidance to staff was that this seemed like an interesting idea. They would like staff to pursue it, but they did not want anything to get in the way of completing the primary directive from City Council, which is to work on PUDs and get them done. So they said, don't work on it until you've got some downtime from that. So that was their direction, and that's sort of the context as background for this.
Do you have the time now?
That's a tricky question.
Well,
you know, the Planning Commission, as you know, is not meeting at the moment. If you would like for me to have a conversation with the chair about the next time the commission is meeting of what can be done, then we can certainly do that.
For what it's worth hearing from a counselor on this, I think it's a very polite request, and for what it's worth, as you talk to the Planning Commission chair, it'd be great to respect this request and to give them an answer. They're a longstanding community member, and they've been asking for 7 years. So prioritizing this makes sense to me.
Tom, I have to agree. If this was something that came up, you know, within the last year, it'd be one thing, but it's been 7 years, and that's kind of not good. I like to think that we don't push things down the road that far. So maybe we can, and I understand from what you explained, Tim. I mean, in my simplistic mind, it was good. It's not a whole lot of space. That'll create efficiency, give them a variance and get the job done. But I guess we're not allowed to do that, right? Or it's not recommended?
It sounds like the LDRs don't allow it, so the DRB can't grant something like that. That's the
Say
problem.
again, Tim. I'm having trouble hearing you.
I said, I think that the DRB doesn't have the power to grant a variance or waiver here because of the way the LDRs are written, or for whatever their lot coverage is right now. They're
Is it-
probably maxed out.
The primary concern is adding to stormwater, right?
But I don't know, I don't know what's behind the LDR, but you got to understand all of those businesses and all of those properties are covered in asphalt. I mean, their job is to repair cars, store cars, and sell cars. That's why they're covered in asphalt. The question is, do they have adequate stormwater to treat the water and put it safely back into Lake Champlain? Because they are very close to the lake, and there's not many other options at that point.
Right.
So, I am sorry for this to these business people that they have not been able to get traction with the city in order to try and push this request through. So their request is a good request because they have they think they have a valid concern about their property. The fact that it's been going on for 7 years and they're still in business makes me think that it's not as acute a problem as they might think it is. And I'm sorry that we haven't taken action on it, but the city's been busy with a lot of other stuff, and so sometimes things fall down in priority. And currently, since we're in interim zoning, I can't see how we're going to make any progress with the planning commission the way it is right now. But we can certainly ask. I mean, I'm willing to ask the planning commission to move forward.
Well, I'm hearing a pretty
Yeah,
broad
Helen?
consensus that the council would like at least Paul to have the conversation with Jessica, that we're interested and would like their feedback about when they could take this up. Because I agree, 7 years is a long time. And I think Bill has been very patient. He's also been generous in many other ways to the city. So I don't think he's a business person who has, attempted to take advantage of, rather he's given. And I do think the language was talking about a car lot or a business that has streets on two sides, and not all of them have that. They may have multiple buildings, but they don't necessarily have 3 streets or 2 streets on either side. They're not corner lots. So there may be a way to get to a reasonable, address this concern. So unless I hear anyone saying, no, I haven't heard you right, I would ask Paul to convey our interest in determining whether the Planning Commission can either create a subcommittee or as a whole, see if they
Yes.
can take this on. Megan, do you have a
That's
dissent
the
or
word I
something?
wanted to say. That's the word I wanted to say was subcommittee. Yes.
Okay.
So let me ask one more question, if I might, Stephanie. Do you know the impact from a stormwater perspective for your particular property? Because, the concern Tim mentioned is, of course, across all 5 properties. And then, of course, listening to what you said and what Helen just said, maybe you tighten the whole adjustment up even further. It have to be properties with streets on 2 sides, and that might only be you and Heritage, for example.
Right.
So there's more than, there may be more than one way to look at this, but do you know the impacts on the stormwater on this property, on your property?
Well, I think our stormwater permit, our existing stormwater permit would cover us to do
Okay.
this increased coverage. And truthfully, any of the regulation, whether as written or with this addition, would have to be conditional on that, of course. And so we
Sure.
would be happy to go through that process to prove that we have capacity or treatment is being provided.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
my-
thank you. So
my
David,
thought-
let's not litigate it here.
No.
Let's sort of move on. We've asked Paul to get in touch with Jessica and get back to us ASAP. If that's something they can take up and what the time frame might be. And if they can utilize a subcommittee, that would be great. So
That's
that's,
what-
Just to be clear though, Helen, it's the council's view that this should be a priority for the planning commission? Or are you gonna leave it to the planning commission to decide? I think if you want to have a statement to the planning commission, tell them you want to get this done, or you want it to delay behind other things. But I think Bill's been down this road with the planning commission a few times.
right. Well, I personally would like them to take it up. Too
too.
sweet.
Yeah,
too.
I think, it's been too long, and sometimes you just get to the point where it's time to get something done, so let's get it done.
I would just like streamlining to be in there. That's why I think that having a subcommittee kind of prepare it for the full,
Sure,
commission would be a good idea.
absolutely.
I would hope that in talking to the planning commission, that it would be clear that the number of businesses or properties affected is very small. So you should be able to ascertain if, like, everybody took advantage of this 10% differential, how that would affect, those areas and that property and stormwater. And then the question is, I mean, is there, what are the effects of that, besides the positive effects of the business? What could be some negative effects? I mean, that's what the planning commission does anyway, but in such a small area, they should be able to figure that out pretty quickly, I would think.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
Well,
Is that
we'll
clear
follow
enough,
up.
Paul?
Yeah, we'll follow up. I did want to note again that the commission had given us a thumbs up to a different sort of approach to this whole thing, just as a time matter. So when I do speak with Jessica, this is Bill and Stephanie have thought of a good solution here. There is also the solution that the commission had sort of given a general thumbs up to that also achieves the same objective.
Great.
So
Good.
I'll talk with her about both.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Well,
well,
thank
thank
you
you very
very much.
much. We look forward to hearing their response.
Okay,
And
well,
then-
keep in mind that the commission is not meeting at the moment, so I will speak with the chair. Just
Right,
to be-
and maybe
right.
it's time for them to begin to meet electronically like we are. Because you are certainly moving forward with the work we've given on IZ, so there is certainly something for them to look at. Okay, well, thank you very much, Bill and Stephanie.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, stay safe. Moving on to item 9, discuss and possibly approve scheduling a public hearing for June 15th, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. to consider extending the duration of interim bylaws. I think we have a motion, right? Would
Yes.
someone like to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
So moved.
I beat you to it.
Second.
Second.
Well, yeah. Okay, so the motion is, I move that the city council provide notice that it will hold a public hearing on June 15th, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. to consider extending the duration of the city of South Burlington interim bylaws. So we have it moved by whom?
Me,
Dave?
Dave. Yep.
I thought I did, but I
And
guess it's Dave.
seconded,
You can have it if you
and
want.
Tim
No, you can have
seconded it.
I didn't
So
second it.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, we'll do a roll call. So Tim Barrett?
Aye.
Aye. Dave Kaufman?
I,
Megan Emery?
Aye.
Tom Chittenden?
Aye.
And the chair votes yes, so it passed 5-0. Thank you. So now we move on to, let's see, I gotta keep having to bring up the agenda. Okay, number 10 are interviews with applicants for appointment to the South Burlington boards, commissions, and committees. So now I've got to find that. Pardon me? Yeah, I need to find the sheet. Yeah.
Ellen, sorry to interrupt, but this is Penny Tompkins, and I'll be Michael Mittag. I am not Michael Mittag, but I'm on your list.
Okay, great,
Can I
Penny.
do that?
Yes, and Larry Cooperman joined us, and Pat Leduc. I may not have gotten everyone else. I didn't. But anyway, so let us find that. Ugh. 2020. Why can't I find this? Has anyone found it yet? The spreadsheet? I don't have it on my.
No, I
Yeah,
looked for it.
it was in the, it was in the
Separate
box.
file in the box.
Yeah, I'm
Lin-
trying to
first
find
on-
that.
Ted Linsky is the first application in the bundle.
Where is it, Tom?
It's
So it's a-
separate. It's separate
separate
from the agenda, Helen.
Yes, but I'm trying to find the whole thing and I can't. Oh, here it is. No, that was not it. That was last week. Today is 5/18, right? Oh, there it is. Okay. I apologize. Thank you. I found it. Is that? Go. So the first one on the. Wait. I'm sorry. Is Ted Linsky. And can Ted wave his hand? Is that Ted? That's Ted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
And you are interested in 2 committees, as I understand. Energy is your first choice and the Library Board of Trustees is your second?
That's correct.
Okay. So and you wrote a nice piece about your experience and what you hope to bring to the table. Are you familiar with how long when the committees meet and when,
Yes.
and does that work for your schedule? And
It does. I've looked at the committee minutes and the committee charter, and I feel comfortable that I can, on the energy committee, I can definitely meet that schedule and commitment.
okay, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself that's maybe
Sure.
not in your essay, but would be pertinent, your skill sets perhaps that.
Sure, I'll talk to the energy committee. My background, I'm a mechanical engineer by degree. Been 31 years in industry and moved to the South Burlington area in March. I am now semi-retired from the company I worked for, which was W.R. Grace, which was a chemical manufacturing company. I was in charge of their main manufacturing plant that had over 500 people. One of the things that we did, obviously, was the consumer of energy. And we did work a lot with the state of Maryland. This was in Maryland where I lived. And we work with the state of Maryland and we work with the local communities to be a partner with the community in developing sustainable and renewable energy projects for the manufacturing site, which included solar, which included combined heat and power. But we were always looking to minimize our footprint, comply with our permits, and work with the community because our license to operate came from the community. And now that I'm in my semi-retired mode with the W.R. Grace, I wanted to work with community leaders to try and work and build relationships with businesses to try and focus that. And I thought the Energy Committee would be one where my background, my experience with energy projects, and my experience in industry would assist me as I move to the South Burlington community.
Right. Well, that sounds like some good skills, and you clearly have worked and contributed to communities in which you've lived. So that's always good practice for this. Are there other questions by other counselors? I got a thumbs up from Tom. Okay, so sounds like you have a lot of skills. Our process is we will go through all of the candidates and then to determine who all is interested. I think there's 3 openings on energy, is that right? And then we will have a meeting and make appointments and announce them, and we will let you know. Do you have
Okay.
any questions for us?
No, I just, again, being new to the area, it's an area we've looked at for many years, and we moved up here, and we wanted, I feel my, as I work with the community on the business side, working with the community now that I'm more of a member of
a community in my retired state, I wanted to try and contribute to the community because I saw the value being generated by business relationships and community relationships when I work with the local community at my manufacturing sites on their community action panel, as well as helping out in the underprivileged community that my manufacturing site was located. So it's a very rewarding experience.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your interest and your application, and we will be back in touch.
Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. Next up is MJ Real. I don't see her. Is she here?
Oh, hello, I'm over in the corner, or at least in my screen, I'm in the corner.
Oh, you know, my little turn off microphone icon is right in front of you. Okay, well, welcome. So, Mary, do you want MJ is your nickname,
Mary
right?
Jo or MJ, I forget who I tell what to.
Okay, so you're interested in the Energy Committee as well, and have been pretty active in South Burlington. You want to tell us a little bit about why you're interested in that and the skills that you bring?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've lived in South Burlington for 25 years. Have 2 young adult children, and a husband and a dog, and live in Queen City Park. I was on the Red Rocks Committee quite a while. I can't remember. Is that Tom Hubbard there? I see. Yeah, hi Tom. Yeah, we were. And I think I saw Larry Cooperman, who was also on the Red Rocks.
Yep.
So that was a long time. I don't remember exactly how long. And I think at around the same time, I was very involved in the schools for a long time, and we started a sustainability group called SLIME, standing for Sustainable Living Initiatives Motivating Youth. And it started at Orchard School, and then it expanded to all the other schools. And now it exists in a different format, really called Common Roots, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. So my interest in that area goes back quite a ways. I also was on a strategic planning, 5-year strategic planning committee for the South Burlington School District, and was also on a, well, it was the Community Center Options Committee way back when, you know, a long time ago. I don't even think it was called City Center then. So anyway, I have been involved in city and school issues, and haven't been more recently, and I'm interested in getting more involved in that. I feel like the biggest interest in my life right now for volunteering really is related to climate change and the environmental situation that we're in. We have solar panels on our house. I just bought a plug-in hybrid. I took an intro to environmental science course at CCV, and learned a lot about what governments can and could do, and what communities can do climate change situation. Yeah, my background for work has been mostly in sales, but related to sort of outreach and partnership building, project management, and I have some ideas, but of course my main goal in the beginning, of course, would to be understanding what the current committee is doing. I've looked at some of the information. I remember what you did with the energy prize. That was impressive. And looked at the annual report for the energy committee, and it looks like they have some good solid goals for 2020. So, I'd really be interested in listening and understanding what the team is already doing and how I could help.
Great. And you're aware of when they meet and how?
Yes.
Well, they're not meeting now, but that's an active committee, I will tell you.
Okay.
Very energized.
It sounded like, I can't remember off the top of my head what it was, but it didn't conflict. The only other evening, meeting, I'm on a board of kids gardening, and it's a pretty active board right now, but our meetings don't conflict with the energy committee.
Okay. Good. Other counselors have questions? Great. Okay, well, it sounds like you would bring some good experience and energy and interest to a really fine committee. So they're looking for they need some new people. So looks like we have 2 good candidates so far. So I thank you for your interest. Oh, Tim Barrett.
Yeah, this is really a make or break question here, MJ. What kind of a car did you get?
Wait, what was the question?
What kind of a car did you get?
Oh, it's embarrassing to tell you. It's a Volvo T8.
Sorry, no. Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Well,
I'm
he's
just
only one vote, so don't
It's
worry.
a pretty fancy car, I gotta say. It's a crazy car. And I'll tell you some other time the reason I have that car.
Okay.
It's a stepping stone to a more practical, it's a leased car for a more practical, all electric.
Well,
Yeah,
thank you
I probably just lost the position, but
No.
thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much for your interest. We all appreciate it, and we'll be back in touch.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, the next candidate is Patrick Leduc, and he wants to continue on the Library Board of Trustees. So Patrick, tell us, you obviously understand how often they meet and what they're working on. What do you think the biggest goals are facing them? And
I think there's something about a new library we're trying to build.
Yeah,
I've heard
that's
something
the
about
big one.
that. Yeah, that's probably the big one. And then obviously figuring out the right way to leave the new library with a new size, new collection, and right sizing all of that as we move forward. And creating that as a, which is not great right now, but creating a new hub for our community to come together. So I think, seeing that through and getting that up and running along with the city and the senior centers will be a great step for our community.
Okay. I think you've already proven your your talents. And are there any other questions by counselors?
No, the library team has done a superb job, and continue on. Get this new library open and functioning, and we're great. So thank you for all the hard work you all have done.
It takes
And Tim, you can't ask what kind of car he drives.
No. I was just going to say we need somebody with the naming rights and a 6-figure donation to put their name on it. If you could come up with that, it'd be great. Thank you.
If you're volunteering, I'll reach out to you.
Yeah, right. He is working hard on that. Okay, so you know the shtick, and we'll be back in touch. Thank you very much for your interest and willingness to continue. It's a lot of work, but it's an exciting time for sure. So
Same
thank
to
you,
guys.
Patrick.
Same to the council. You guys do a lot of work. Thank you.
You are welcome. So the next candidate is Drew Schatzer. Am I pronouncing that right? And
yes, you are.
Drew is interested in the Natural Resources Committee. So tell us, you've been in South Burlington for about 2 years. You live
Last
near
week
my
makes
mother-in-law.
3.
Almost 3. Okay. So tell us, tell us about some of the skills that you would bring to the Natural Resources Committee and why you'd like to serve.
Sure. I've been working in the natural resources field since about 2012 with a focus on invasive plant removal. I would like to continue working in it. Well, I was able to work for a citizen advocacy group in Florida, where I'm from, called the Friends of Lake Apopka, and I served on their board for a couple of years. And I did a lot of community outreach, tabling at garden shows and city events, recruiting more people, and reaching out to the community and letting them know what we've been doing and our successes and things like that. So I really enjoyed that work, and I've kind of been out of it now for a couple of years, and I'd like to get back into it. And so now I'm working with students, and we do a lot of invasive plant removal. And I've been doing some work with the city too, with Ashley Parker and Mike Bald at the Weed Warrior events last summer.
Yes.
I've been really enjoying those, and I'd like to see that program expand. And so basically that's kind of where I'm coming from. And I also, just sitting on this meeting, and realized that I have a lot still to learn about what South Burlington does. And I feel like this is a great opportunity to bring some some of my experience to the table and also learn a lot at the same time.
Okay. Questions by counselors? Tim Barrett.
Yeah, where is Lake Apopka?
It is in Central Florida, just outside of Orlando. It's the most polluted large lake in the state. And the group Friends of Lake Apopka has been doing amazing work since the late 80s, early 90s. And in 96, they passed really awesome legislation that, or got it passed, that like diverted a ton of funding. They were able to buy up 25,000 acres of farmland, and it's now an active restoration area there. So it's a really cool success story. And I've seen a lot just in my 3 years here of overlap with Lake Champlain and the ag runoff, and so it's something I know a bit about, and I feel like I could offer some insight.
Cool,
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Do you have any questions for us?
Not at the moment, thanks.
Okay, well, if you do, you can call us.
Did you ask him about meeting schedule and all of that, Ellen?
I think I did. Are you aware of when the committee meets and how often?
Not off the top of my head. I saw it on one of the emails, the warning list or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think it's once a month.
Yeah.
And they do interact with the DRB on occasion and different, I believe.
Oh, I did have something else I wanted to share. This year, I've just begun, I'm now the co-leader of Project Triage up on Dorset Street with Marie Ambusk. And I've done a little work there too with Craig Lampert. And so I'm learning a lot from them too, and been working at the Wheeler property. And so anyway, I'm already going to be there at least a few times a month, several hours a month doing work.
Right.
And yeah.
Okay. Any questions, anyone? Well, I thank you for the service you've already offered, and we will be back in touch. And I truly appreciate your interest in serving on this committee. It's an important one. It also includes kind of open space now too. So it's not just simply natural resources, but it's open space. It's very important to this community, and it's in need of some new blood and new faces. So thank you. Were you on when I talked about the process? We'll hear all the, okay. All right. So it might be, I don't know, another couple weeks. I think we'll interview additional people in 2 weeks. So, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see. Next is Larry Kupferman. And Larry, you want to be on the Natural Resources Committee also?
Yes, thank you. And I have done invasive work with Drew in the past.
Oh, I have too.
Yeah.
I'm a weed warrior as well.
Yes, right. So thank you. My interest is to be on the Natural Resources Committee, and I think you're right, Helen, about the open space discussion. Really has to do with sort of trying to find that balance, which is always so hard to find between.
Sorry, excuse me.
Between the working landscape and people's needs and housing and open space and wildlife conservation, and it's an ongoing discussion, and I'd like to join in on that and offer at least some background and experience in having that discussion on an ongoing basis. My own focus has been around Red Rocks, of course, because I'm down here in Queen City Park. I enjoy coming to other parts of the city on occasion. Crossing Shelburne Road is always a challenge, but we can do it for sure. I most recently, since in retirement, has been trying to spend as much time outside as possible. So I've certainly joined Ashley and Mike Bald and weed worrying and waste worrying and composting and gardening, and I think raising that aspect in life into the discussion about how to make all that available to as many people as possible and still meet other human needs, particularly around housing. I see Sandy Dooley's in the crowd as usual, and between housing and open space and development, it's always a struggle to get the right mix.
Okay.
I heard, Helen, you mentioned that the Natural Resources Committee does work some with, in the development world in terms of understanding the rules and regulations around development and its impact on the natural world. And I did sit on the DRB in the 90s, and that same discussion was always part of the developer's world, and I think it's probably more so now.
Great. So you've had some experience, at least listening.
I have had some of that
Yeah,
experience.
that's great. Are there any other questions that people have?
Appreciate the
certainly-
chance to see it. I appreciate
Yeah.
the chance to see everybody. It's been a while.
Yeah,
I
it
do have a
has.
question about when do you anticipate the committees to start meeting again?
Well, that's a question that the council needs to discuss.
All right.
I know some had hoped to start the beginning of May, and we're past that. But and so that's a good question, and I probably ought to start calling some chairs and finding out when they're available. This kind of technology takes a fair amount of staff time too.
Exactly. I know the technology, and
So it
not
doesn't-
everybody has it. Right.
Yeah, it doesn't just happen by us sitting here.
For sure. For sure. Yeah.
But soon, we hope.
Good.
Okay, well, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Larry, for all you've done in the past, and hopefully there'll be more in the future. So do we have any more? Is that the last one? No. Dave Crawford, is Dave here? I don't see him. Okay.
There's Colin McIntosh.
We have Eric Silverman. Is that next, or did I pass by someone? Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, it was. After Larry was Colin Patrick McIntosh, right? Is Colin here? Okay, hi, Colin. All right, so welcome.
Thank you.
And you're interested in natural resources as well.
Yes.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
tell us about yourself.
So I am from the Boston area. I came up to University of Vermont, graduated in 2009, and came back about a year later, and I haven't left since. I recently purchased a house in South Burlington, coming up on 3 years, and it's just been a wonderful town for me, and this is a place I plan on seeing myself for a long time to come. Part of my neighborhood is up against 89, and so I put together just an email, kind of a plan, some ideas on what we could do and what the potential was for a noise abatement wall, a sound wall along the backside of the neighborhood. I sent that out to the city council. I got some really good responses, and I joined the next meeting after that. And that kind of got me involved a little bit in the town, and it made me want to get more involved. I think this is a wonderful town with a lot of opportunity. There's a lot going on right now, and I'm just looking for different ways to get myself involved and try to make a positive impact for a long time to come. I don't have as much experience within the natural resources aspect specifically, but I am eager to learn and do whatever I can to help move any positive and productive agendas forward.
Great. And did you happen to go online and read any minutes or the goals of the Natural Resources and Open Space Committee, or?
I looked through the site. I checked out some of the minutes, some of the agendas there. And so, yeah, like I said, it's a big learning opportunity for me for sure. So with that being said, I'm not sure exactly what type of expertise
you're looking for in these types of committees. But if you are willing to bring on someone who is eager to learn, to get out and to promote some positive action, that is something I'm certainly looking forward to trying.
Well, we certainly look for skill sets. It's not just looking for people who have a lifelong job related to natural resources as preparation, but really skill sets. Do you think you have any in particular that would enhance the moving forward of the goals of natural resources and open space?
I think where I can really come in and make a positive impact is getting a group of people to work together to make some productive decisions and to be able to foster and facilitate teamwork in a way that leads to, I think, a more efficient practices and being able to work through different arguments and opportunities that come up.
Great. Well, those are skills that would be helpful on any committee, in this one and for sure. Do any other counselors have questions?
Just a quick question.
Tim.
Yeah, so you work at dealer.com?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell us what you do there?
Sure. So I work as a regional strategist on our Audi program. We have websites for all the Audi dealerships. They use dealer.com. The 300 dealers are broken up into 4 different regions. So I help facilitate digital strategy, training, and education for stakeholders within within those 2 regions. So I'm really helping those regions achieve their goals through the use of dealer.com's platform and training on best practices when it comes to digital marketing.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Tom, yes.
So Colin, I remember speaking with you, and I remember you being open to just about any committee that you're just looking to get involved. Is that a fair statement, or do you have your eyeballs just on the Natural Resource Committee?
Nope, that is actually true, and I hope people here don't see that as me not taking this seriously, but it really is. It seemed like a way for me to work my way in a little bit, get a little bit more involved in the community, the neighborhood. So if there are other opportunities on different committees where they do need some help, whatever that may be, I am open to that.
Great. Good question, Tom. Okay. Any other questions? Do you have any questions for us?
I definitely would like to learn a little bit more about how, I guess, action is taken within a committee. And for example, if we review a proposal, if different opportunities come to our table, we review those, and then we come up with a decision and pass that along to the council for a final say. I'd be curious to learn a little bit more of the inner workings on how we go about, as a particular committee, influencing decisions as greater.
Well, the vast majority of the committees and commissions work for the council, and sometimes we give them specific tasks to do, to consider and come back with a proposal for our review and approval or incorporation in something. Then there's also some broader goals that each committee has that they work on in order to, I think, better inform the community and the council on different policy issues for which they have some expertise or influence.
Okay.
So sometimes it's a specific task, and other times it's more general, or they weigh in with ideas or considerations when we are taking up different issues.
Okay, and that's along the lines of what I assume, but I appreciate the clarification. I guess the last thing I'd like to say is as it's been mentioned, I think pretty evident here, I don't have necessarily a specific skill set for a specific committee, but if you do see opportunities with other committees, for example, that could use someone who's willing to get in there and to help promote some agendas or do whatever it is that you guys need from the city council to help with your decision making, please just keep that in mind.
Well, thank you very much. That's a generous offer, and I'm sure we'll find something for you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Dave Crawford. I don't see him, so I haven't noticed that he's joined us. So let's move on to Eric Silverman. And Eric, you are interested in either the Bicycle and Ped Committee or the Recreation and Park Committee. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and are those equal interests or either one?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Eric. I am definitely more interested in the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee because that's where my passions lie mostly, but definitely very interested in the Parks and Recreation Committee as well. A little bit about myself is I grew up in the Washington, D.C. suburbs and then attended university in North Carolina. I think both of those experiences kind of frame my perspective in relation to, in particular, the bicycling and cycling in the area. And a key inflection point in my life, as I noted on my essay application, is that I had a lifelong goal of through hiking the Appalachian Trail, which does go through Vermont, and I completed that directly after I graduated college in 2017. And following that, I returned home, got a job in the DC area. Wasn't particularly satisfied. My passions are relating to being outdoors, backpacking, hiking, running, and bicycling, all which fall in line under the purview of the committees, both of them pretty equally. And then following a through hike of the Continental Divide Trail out in the Rockies, me and my partner, my girlfriend, decided to move up to the Burlington area. She got a job, and I came along around the first of the year, and just been absolutely loving it, taking it in, having the ability to bike around without too many people honking or feeling terribly unsafe. So I've been actually using my furlough. I got a job at the Outdoor Gear Exchange on Church Street, which is a very nice, welcoming place, and have just been using my furlough as an opportunity to explore the South Burlington area, because I'm brand new here, but I don't see that necessarily as a negative. I just think that's part of my background and will give me valuable perspective.
Great. Questions, council members? Tim.
Hi, Eric. What suburb are we talking about?
The suburb in particular was Kensington, which is right around Bethesda.
What are the odds?
What's going on?
I'm from Kensington too.
No way.
East Bexhill Drive.
Oh, you got me on a joke here.
No, I can.
Are you
prove
serious?
it. Yeah, we'll talk later.
All right. Oh, that's weird because I also grew up on East Bexhill Drive and lived there for 21 years of my life. This
I
is
was
weird.
10,005, right near Kent.
Oh, I was 9811 right off Littledale between Saul.
Wow. This is a small world, folks. A really small world.
Tiny.
It is. That's right. 6 degrees of separation, and sometimes it's only 1.
I guess you got his vote, Eric.
Well, I don't know.
Whatever it takes, that works.
And are you aware of how often they meet and
Yeah.
that kind of information?
That should be no problem with my schedule.
That shouldn't be a problem. All right, good. Are there any other questions? I mean, maybe you're related to someone. Are there any other questions? Are there particular skills that you think you would bring in terms of how a committee works, and that you're, particularly good at, reaching consensus, or I don't know what it might be?
Yeah, I mean, my kind of educational background is in economics and statistics, which probably don't translate directly to the committee, but I've got a number literacy, data literacy in particular, which I think could be valuable. But I think my main asset to the committee is passion and energy for both parks and recreation and cycling and pedestrian travel as a means to just improve the overall community.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. And you understand the process from earlier? The earlier
Yes,
description? Okay.
I've heard about the
Great.
process, and I'd like to thank you all for your service.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for showing interest in our community, especially as a new member of the community. That's great. So thank you. Next up is Penny Tompkins. And Penny wants to continue on public art.
Yes, please. What can I, well, what do you want me to tell you? I've been on public art for one term. I think it's really valuable to the community. I had the opportunity to work with the group on the clock thing that is going to go into the new library, the sculpture, and the process was really thorough. I think our team did a great job of narrowing down a lot of applications, and we work well together. And I do find public art to be of great value. And, you know, I just would like to continue to support the committee in whatever way I can.
Great. Okay. So you know what the committee work is like and the time. So
Yes, we meet more as needed. Our frequency is not necessarily set in stone like some other committees. But actually, I think the next one, new one, will be the Williston Road Streetscape will be the next new project for public art. And our group is also interested in trying to expand sort of the idea of, is there more generic public art that could be of value to the community? And especially now, it's been interesting to hear and see, you know, people are painting rocks on the pathways for other people to see, you know, putting up hopeful signs all in different places. So there's just a great opportunity to use art to uplift our community. And I want to continue to be part of that.
anyone have any questions? All right. Well, thank you for your past service, and we look forward to you continuing.
Thank you very
So,
much.
thank you, Penny. Okay, Ariel Jensen Vargas. And Ariel, you are interested in the Affordable Housing Committee as a
Yes.
first choice and the Housing Trust Fund Advisory Committee.
Yes,
Both
I
of
would
which
also,
I guess.
I would also
So-
like to be interested in the Development Review Board, but wherever is of most interest, yes. It was
Okay.
most needed. But my first interest is the Affordable Housing Committee.
All right, so tell us why.
Oh, well, actually, in New York City, I finished my master's in public administration. My thesis was on affordable housing in New York City. And what gave rise to that was my work with a licensed master plumber over the course of 9 years, resolving housing violations. And what I found was that by instituting some of the rules and regulations around gas piping, violations for safety ended up raising the homeless rate, as well as forcing low-income homeowners into foreclosure. So that actually made me very passionate about being very careful when instituting policy, how this would affect people, you know, negatively in unintended ways, even though, of course, it's better for safety to be a priority. So I came to Vermont with my daughter, who is a science prodigy. She's a full ride at UVM studying for her veterinary career. And since then, so we came in July. Since then, I've become a member of the Junior League of Champlain Valley. I've also been a mentor with South Burlington mentoring at the South Burlington Middle School. And I'm also in the process of becoming a board member for HANDS, which is a senior assistant organization where seniors help each other by making meals around holiday times and providing services. So just kind of getting to know how things work around here and seeing where I can be of the most help.
Great. Are you familiar with how often the Affordable Housing Committee meets and?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes. So it meets about at least once a month, as I can see from the website. So when I was also getting my master's degree, I also got my certificate in digital marketing for nonprofits through N10. And I tried to start basically a Burlington chapter of N10, which is a nonprofit organization that helps nonprofits with their digital tech. So that's actually my specialty, is digital marketing and IT, basically for governments and nonprofit organizations, which I've been doing for about 15 years.
Okay. Other questions, council members? Oh, I did get a message that the Affordable Housing Committee typically meets on Tuesday mornings and often twice a month. Is that still?
That's fine.
Work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've
All right,
also
good.
been a landlord both in the city and in the Adirondacks. So I'm very well acquainted with construction, with the difference, with tenants, being a tenant and being a land owner, both in the city and in the country in a lot of different situations. So I actually kind of see a lot of situations from both sides.
Great. Okay. Questions, other council members? Okay. Well, seeing none, we will go through our process and be back in touch. And it sounds like there's a couple various committees that you might be interested in. So
Yeah.
I appreciate your interest in working for the betterment of our city. So thank you.
Yes, me too. I would love to do that. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And
You're
thank
very
you all for
welcome.
your service. Nice to meet you all.
Thank
Nice
you.
to meet you. Thank you. Okay, I think that is all of the applicants that we have tonight. So we'll move on to number 11, update and council discussion on request to enter into a conservation agreement with an outside organization to conserve the Wheeler property, excluding the homestead site. All right, and so we got an off.
Michael, can
Why
you
am I
mute
getting
until you have to
funny
speak?
feedback?
Sorry, what were you saying?
Can you mute until you have to speak, please?
I'm getting some funny feedback.
It's Michael's laptop or whatever. It keeps echoing whenever he's not on mute.
Oh, so Michael, will you put your laptop on mute? That sounds better. Thank you. Okay. That's so weird. Well, we got a lot of information sent to us on this, and it's an issue that we have kind of dealt with in the past. And my recollection, frankly, was the last time we talked about this, there was still some legal issues with, maybe it was the golf course, the jam thing, that precluded us from making a decision about creating this conservation easement with a third party. And then we also got information that a portion of the property was already essentially conserved through the city's use of the property as ag mitigation for other development. So the question was raised by Michael Mittag, who was on the committee. When are we going to make a decision? So it's on the agenda for this evening. And I guess the question is the council interested in pursuing an agreement with a third party? We have heard from several of them, and I think the committee interviewed a couple and came up with some recommendations. Or are we interested in not doing anything, believing that the land is essentially already conserved? And also there's a cost involved. And there's different opinion, I think, about how the what the vote that was taken in whatever it was, 1999, or I can't even remember. It was a long time ago. About the property. So what is, Kevin, you have some strong feelings. Do you want to share them with us? And I know Michael has a perspective, so we need to hear from him.
Thanks, Helen. No, I wrote the memo to the council. I think my recommendation is to not move forward because I think the land is adequately off limits to development. I think the resources that we're going to expend on this could be better used elsewhere. You've got another open space opportunity coming up shortly, as you know, with the Eau Claire property. I think we're going to need that money if the council wants to further control the conservation of that property. So it's, from my standpoint, it's a resource issue. I think the council has the authority to do whatever you want in this matter. I know people feel strongly about it. It's not, you know, I just think it's not a great use of resource, but that's my opinion. So.
Okay. Michael, you want to share with us your thinking?
Yes, I think what I wrote is more or less what I'm going to say. Yes.
This is Sandy Dooley. Would you defer to me to speak before you?
I beg your pardon?
Would you allow me to speak? The reason why I was.
You need to go somewhere.
When this vote was taken.
Andy, we've got maybe it's only me, but I've got an audio problem. Every word you're saying is rebounding and echoing, so totally lose what you're
I
saying.
believe Michael has a microphone in front of the speakers. That's what often creates this type of echo.
So Michael, are you willing to let Sandy speak before you or not? Is that a yes?
Michael, you gotta turn your microphone back.
Yes, that's okay.
Okay. So Sandy, and then we'll go back to Michael.
Okay, I wanted to speak from a historical perspective because I was city council chair in 2011 when this vote was, when we voted to put it on the ballot and when it took place. And one of the things I specifically recall is the ballot item could not have required the city council to enter into a conservation easement because that would be the equivalent of a referendum vote in which the electorate made the decision. And we are a representative democracy in South Burlington, and our councilors of the city council is the only body that could actually do this. So, but it also, our charter, I believe, requires that that the city get the authorization of the electorate to enter into this kind of an agreement. So the fact that the ballot says authorize is, it couldn't have said otherwise. In other words, it couldn't have said that we would require the city council to put a conservation easement on the property. The second thing I wanted to say was I really believe that the commitment to the residents or the voters was that if this vote passed, the council would enter into a conservation easement for this property. One of the reasons why I say that is we sought and received the support of the South Burlington Land Trust for this land swap. And as I think a lot of people know, the residents of South Burlington consider the Wheeler Nature Park as a very, very precious natural resource, having voted overwhelmingly not to build a police station there. And so the part of the inducement, I would say, or the persuasion to the South Burlington Land Trust to support the swap was this commitment. And I believe that Paul Connor wrote a memo that documents that commitment. And this, I recall members of the Land Trust writing letters to the editor in support of the land swap. So I personally believe that there was a commitment on the part of the council that a vote to authorize meant that the follow through on the part of the council was to place a conservation easement on the property. Now, I just have a couple of other comments, and that is, I don't know what the cost is, but if it's not prohibitive, it seems to me that there might be private fundraising that could pay for the cost. I'm not guaranteeing that, but I certainly think that if the council wanted to explore that, that should be explored. And also, I guess I read Kevin's memo, and with all due respect, I'm not convinced that what's currently in place would provide the equivalent protection from development that a conservation easement with a third party would provide. So that's all. If you want to ask me any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them. But that's my perspective from having been the city council chair when this vote took place. I believe it was December 2011.
Thank you. So, Michael, would you like to?
Yes. Yes, well, I was also here in 2011 and very much involved with this, with promoting this project. And there's been a lot of talk recently in the last year about the quid pro quo. And in this case, there certainly was one. As Sandy has said, residents and the voters clearly understood that if they supported this land swap proposal to settle this long-standing litigation, that the city would go ahead and seek a conservation easement on the remainder of the Wheeler Nature Park. That means minus the 6.9 acres that at the corner of Dorset and Park Road. And not doing so will certainly not provide adequate protection for this land. The only way it can be protected is a conservation easement, which most of them are in perpetuity. So future generations and future councils won't be able to develop on it. It's also left open, and we had expressed, the task force had already expressed its dismay and concern about the fact that the city had allowed the Wheeler Park to be used, or parts of the Wheeler Park to be used as prime ag soil mitigation. And that is an alienation of public land, which I don't think is proper, because it's no longer fully controlled by the city. There have been several. There were some mitigation areas that were already in place when the task force started its work, but the task force was not aware of it. Became aware of it when the task force presented its final report to the council. There are I see other proposed uses of this park for prime ag soil mitigation areas. 7 acres to compensate for the prime ag soils used by Jam Golf on the corner of Dorset and Park. I'm not quite sure whether that was part of the settlement agreement, which is really a giveaway by the city. And I don't know the history of the 14.4 acres that existed prior to the task force starting its work. But prime ag soil mitigation in the past has required the developer to buy or convey to the city the land to mitigate. The best example is not Butler, but the other development that's Oak Creek, where they gave the city 28 acres as required by their Act 250 permit. And those 28 or 24 acres in that permit are required to be kept as parkland. And the same obligation to brush hog every 2 years applies to the proposed 7 acres that is now maybe now part of this settlement. But the most important thing is the city promised the residents of South Burlington that this would happen, and you can't go back, you can't renege on that promise. And in my letter, I used part of a legal opinion that we got, which clearly says you can't pick apart the ballot because each item was connected by the word and you have to do them all. And if you do one, then you have to do the rest. So that may be not as important as the fact that there was a clear promise understood by the voters that this would happen. This was the deal. We would support this ballot initiative, and the city council and the city would create the conservation easement with an organization like the Vermont Land Trust, which would be protecting the land in perpetuity. Much as I respect Kevin's note about the fact that this is going to cost $15,000 or $25,000 or $30,000, I don't think that's a good enough reason to break that promise. And I'm happy to answer more questions if there are any.
Ellen?
Come on. Yeah, so, so Michael, can you turn, Megan, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah.
I'm asking for comments.
Yeah, I was on the council at that time, and Sandy and my recollections are my own. And
No, we're getting a lot of feedback on you too.
Can't hear a thing. Can't understand a thing. Try that again.
I think the problem is with Tim Barrett's headphones.
You say with Tim Barrett's head or his headphones?
Take your pick.
Is it good? Can you hear me?
Nothing.
Megan, can you try turning your mic off and turning it back on?
That's what I'm doing. Can you hear me? No.
It's garbled.
It's garbled. That's happened before.
It's all garbled. Can you type something in and I'll read it?
Yes.
Okay. Are there other comments while she's typing?
So we definitely need to conserve this. I'm sensitive to pushing forward with resources right now with the uncertainty of the COVID crisis, but I don't think any councilor on here wants to renege on the promises or whatever was promised in that vote. I just think it's a matter of timing, and I'm not of the mind that we need to prioritize this over so many other things and so many other things before the city. And the last thing that I'd want to know before we were to drop everything and find the money for this is I'd want to understand more of what you were talking about with the Eau Claire property, Kevin, and what you're thinking is coming down the pike, and if those are legal fees as well. So just weighing that in the entire budget landscape is what I'd want to know more of before I would say, let's find the money today. But if you want a commitment, another resolution reaffirming that vote from 2011, I'm not against that, but that's just where I am.
Thank you.
I may have missed this.
Oh, wait a minute, one at a time. Whoa, 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 whoa.
I was going to.
Megan, can you? Well, she's off. All right, Michael, you go.
I was just saying thanks Tom for what he said, and while we could live with a delay, it has been 9 or 10 years since the vote, and that is a long time. And I think everybody's been very patient and understood that getting to the agreement with Highlands Development or Jam Golf was not an easy path to follow, but it's been done now for a couple of years, and the time is now to finish it and get it done and keep the promise. So a delay is fine, but we need a firm, I would say, I would like, on behalf of the Land Trust and the citizens that we engaged to support this, I'd like to get a commitment from the council and a date, a time certain when this will be done.
Helen?
Megan, can you? Nope, she was trying it.
Yeah.
You're set. Okay.
It's good. Keep talking. It was good.
Can you hear me?
Oh, no.
Helen?
You sound like you have this frog in your throat. Kevin,
Yeah.
did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think the estimate that Amanda had put forward was $15,000 up front with the land trust to pay some preliminary costs, another $25,000. Now this is about a year old, $25,000 as an ongoing endowment to maintain the property, then our legal costs. Now, this is going to come out of the open space fund to pay for this. And my concern is that we do have an open space fund opportunity coming up as it relates to the agreement we have on the Eau Claire property to preserve our position to be able to, well, Paul can explain it better than I can. Paul, do you want to talk about, but at the end of the day, we'll do whatever the council tells us to do. I'm just saying that it's a lot of money coming out of the open space fund and at a time when you have another opportunity coming up. I'll let Paul describe that, and then we'll do whatever the council wants us to do.
Sure. Just briefly, this is Paul. To your question, Tom, when the city participated in the fall of 2018 in the conservation of the Eau Claire property, it included a right of first refusal that the city would have to acquire under certain circumstances. The agreement contained within it a provision that if the city wants to retain that right of first refusal past 2020, it was actually originally going to be January, now it's going to be this summer, that the city would contribute an additional 15% of the total value of the property, and therefore preserve the right of first refusal until 2026. So we're anticipating that you will get, the trigger point for that is an updated appraisal for the property. I spoke with the property owners and participants this afternoon. We're expecting that you'll probably receive that in the next 2 to 4 weeks, and then you'll have approximately 4 to 5 weeks after that in which to make a decision.
Okay. Comments?
Is that 15% of the 2.1 million?
Tom? Let's have Tom and then Michael.
15%
Michael,
of the.
turn it off.
I want to
Tom,
know
you have
more
the
about
floor.
that whole deal. So I stand with my previous statement. So thank you, Paul.
Okay. Michael, do you need to speak?
Yes, I do. I'm not sure that the fees and the endowment are payments that should come out of the open space fund. The open space fund is for buying property, and this was never part of the conservation easement discussion. These fees have to come from another bucket, not from the open space fund. Open space fund is for just that. So I don't think that's a cause for picking one conservation project over another.
Helen, can I respond to that, please? I absolutely reject that. We're counting every penny in this city right now. I got 43 employees on furlough. We have decided we're not doing any capital purchases next year. All of our fleet, everything is on hold. All spending's on hold. This fund was set up for the express purpose of conserving property in South Burlington. I totally oppose going to the general fund for this money. We have a fund that is expressly for this purpose. If you want to do this, the money is there. It may limit what you can do with the Eau Claire property, but that's what this money is there for. And I strongly oppose going to the general fund right now when we've got people out of work, and I have no idea what the impact's going to be on the taxpayers come this fall. So you want to do this, it's fine. It's fine for you to make this decision, but the money's got to come out of the open space fund.
When it's my turn, I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, you may.
Okay, so I'm slightly confused at this point. I've listened to what Michael has said. I've listened to what Kevin has said. I've listened to what Paul has said. And certainly we don't want to do anything that contradicts a good decision that an earlier council almost a decade ago made. But if we're accomplishing the same purpose, then times change. And where I'm confused is if we don't do as the land trust suggests, but leave it as is, do we end up in the exact same place? Paul, Kevin, Michael, I am confused as to what the difference is. I definitely want to adhere to promises made, but in as much as times do change and things do change, if we're only doing that just to do it, and we don't have to spend the money on that, then maybe that's the right decision. But I don't think we should spend any money right now until COVID-19 goes by and the dust settles and we see where our budgets are. And it doesn't seem that this is that such extreme urgency. But I could use a clarification from somebody because I've gotten lost on it.
Dave, it's not asking what the South Burlington Land Trust wants to do. It is what the city council agreed or promised to do. And whether the money is paid now or later, because we're not going to do this right away, is beside the point. But these are legal fees and an endowment. And while I understand that the city is saving, avoiding, evading every possible expenditure, I think there are quite a few hundred residents of South Burlington who are doing the same at this time. And so I don't mind waiting, but legal fees and an endowment is not open space. It's not a good use of the open space money.
Could I
Tim,
say something?
Tim?
Yeah, I think it's really sad that the way they're
Conservation Task Force spent as much time as they did that summer, and then kind of got blindsided by David Brew when he said, look, there are already these Act 250 mitigation conservation areas on them. And I remember having a conversation with the city council meetings where I asked, well, if you've already got 2 Act 250 strips that have been conserved, I mean, how much more difficult does it make to apply the conservation easement when you have to carve those out? Because you don't want to have those 2 easements conflicting with each other. And so between the 2 Act 250 easements that are already there, the abundance of wetlands that are there, and the fact that the city has no plans to do anything else with that land, and it's being enjoyed by the citizens for the purpose that it was purchased for, which was open, I think we could focus our attention to the future and other properties, especially purchasing other properties. So it's not a critical thing right now, and especially with the budget the way it is, if we could just put it off, Michael, for some more time and come back to it later. I don't think it's as important as, and the last thing that Kevin had mentioned in his email, it is important to have that land there in case we do need to have other Act 250 mitigation on the city's behalf if that opportunity comes up. Because we won't, the only other place we could possibly do it is Underwood, and I'm not sure if we want to do it there.
Could I possibly say something? This is Sarah Dobb.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Helen. I really appreciated Sandy's articulating the historical perspective, but just taking this back a little bit farther for everybody's recollection, the reason the land trust, the South Burlington Land Trust, that is, got excited about this back when was because of the police station matter, when the city was proposing that a corner of the Wheeler Nature Park be given over to a site for the police station. And I believe that was in 2009, so it takes the history back even farther, and I may be wrong on that date. But at any rate, we did get a lot. Not sure what I'm hearing.
Megan, are you on mute?
I do.
To each other, so you want to turn your speakers off of your laptop.
It sounds like Michael has his mic on again.
Now it sounds like we have a big bird.
Who is caller 01? Who is caller 01?
It's gone.
I just muted Megan. Megan, if you can turn the speaker off on your computer, you're getting your phone is picking up your computer now.
Okay, Sarah, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, well, I'm probably just about done, but I just wanted to bring that further back history into the discussion that at that time the South Burlington Land Trust got quite excited about the use of the Wheeler property for something other than natural resources protection and recreation, as it had been purchased by the citizens for that purpose. Anyway, long story short, the citizens did end up voting very affirmatively to hold on to Wheeler as open space. And this in turn forced, if you want to use that word, the police station to look for other alternatives. And I think most of us would agree that a wonderful alternative was found and the Wheeler property was preserved. So it kind of goes back to that. That being said, well, one other thing is that if we had taken care of this matter a few years ago, when the task force first put forward its report, this money would have been spent. We wouldn't be up against a rock and a hard place right now in terms of money. But I would be fine myself with putting this off. It's been put off, as we can see, for, you could say, 11 years, at least a number of years, as long as there is a guarantee that when we recover a little bit from the current emergency, that this action be taken. So if some kind of action could be crafted that put a date certain 2-3 years out, I would be fine with that as long as there was some guarantee that this would eventually happen. And we know that even though people are going to have trouble paying their taxes right now, the tax base is replenishing the open space fund all the time. That's how it's designed. So, you know, we won't be with an almost empty bucket forever in the open space fund. The whole question about whether that's the appropriate place for the money, I don't think we should get into that tonight. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. I have heard from a number of people that potentially putting this off with potentially a resolution or an agreement that once our financial situation has stabilized and we can make a thoughtful decision about the expenditure of this money, wherever it might come from, seems to be a good consensus. So I would advocate that. I'm not sure. I mean, I think we could have a resolution. We could vote on it and say it at a time certain. I just know it's hard to tie a different group of elected officials to someone else's dream. So that's always a problem. But I think given the fiscal issues, this crises really that this city, this state, and our country are facing, it would not make sense to scrounge around and try to find $25,000 when we've got a $2 million shortfall just this year. I think that would not be wise. I personally would commit to coming back to this issue. I don't know if I'll still be on the council, but I can make that commitment, and others can as well, and we'll see who sits in the seats when people, when our finances are, more secure. Is that?
That makes sense, Helen, as long as but I'd prefer it if there was a somehow binding resolution. But I'd also like to comment on something that Tim said. We do own, the city owns Wheeler Park already. But as Helen has pointed out, a future council might decide, oh, we own it. Let's put an outdoor swimming pool and a recreation center and a whole bunch of development on it. If it's not conserved, that can happen. I can remember that when Underwood was purchased, we had no member of a council, but citizens said, oh, we should sell half of it and use the money to develop the other half. So, there are always dangers when you own land that is not conserved. And the only way to conserve it, for sure, for certain, is with a conservation easement. All I have to say, I hope the council will make the necessary decision. It can be deferred, but as long as it's a definite commitment that can't be undone. And I'm sure you can find advice from Amanda or Andrew as to how to do that.
Thank you. Council, what shall we ask? Shall we prepare a statement that we can support at the next meeting that essentially puts our names anyway on something that says we commit to finding the resources to conserve the property going forward within conservation easement?
Well, I think, Helen, whatever we do, there should be a statement that we all agree on that says that council, this council and any future council is strongly recommended to take any action required to fully conserve the property. whatever that action might be. I mean, it might be a conservation easement. It might be some more Act 250 primary ag soil mitigation that effectively ends up being the same thing. I don't think shouldn't have to specify it, but we should specify the fact that we do want that property conserve, this open space for the enjoyment of the citizens, to be walking on the trails, whatever.
Okay, I'd like to include in that the term in perpetuity, and I think
I agree.
there's other ways. I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be a conservation easement, but that's a statement that I could support. Can we have that on our agenda in 2 weeks and vote on that? Is that amenable to everyone?
Yeah, can somebody draft some wording between now and then, perhaps?
Well, for sure. Tim, you created sort of a baseline. Is that something that we need Andrew or Amanda to do? I guess that's a question for Kevin.
I think what the trouble here, Helen, and I would let Andrew weigh in on it, is the council can't bind a future council.
I know.
And so we'll have to figure out an artful way to do this. Andrew and I will talk about it this week and see if we can come up with some way to achieve that end, taking into account Tim's points and so on, and get back to the council at your meeting on the 1st as to what's a course that you might consider taking.
Okay.
Reaffirming
can
vote
we-
by this council could be quite persuasive to any future council. So if it is 2 or 3 years from now, it's a different council. When Michael Mittag comes back before us again on this, being able to say the council in 2020 gave this unanimous vote, it has meaning. So I think it's still a worthwhile thing to explore.
I would agree. Yes, I would appreciate that. And then,
Okay.
it should be warned for action. So if we want to vote on it, not discuss it further.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much, all of you, for your comments.
I don't want to belabor this point, but the whole point is in fact to bind future councils. And the only way to do that is to get a conservation easement done while this council is sitting. Otherwise, we're in danger of losing the land to a future council that has a different view of conservation.
Okay. Your point well taken. Thank you. Moving on to item 12, April financials and FY end of the year projection and FY21 actions to date. Sort of some good news from Tom Hubbard.
Hey, thanks, Helen. I do appreciate the council's concerns about the fiscal matters as identified in the prior item. It's on a daily basis, I'm saying no many times to things that are in the budget, never mind something that's not in the budget. So again, I thank you for taking that into consideration. As we look forward the next couple months, even though the budget, you've received your April financials at this point, the budget looks good. In a normal year, it would be really good. We'd be in a nice place. We know that that's not the case, and we're still uncertain as to what the impact might be the end of June. As of the end of the day today, I still haven't received the statement from the state of Vermont on the local options. I do expect that will arrive within the next day or two. And as soon as I have something, I will get that out to you even prior to the next meeting. I think it's important information for all of us to have, as it will kind of paint the picture as to where the shortfall might be come the end of June, because that's going to be the bulk of it. Other revenues, fortunately, look like they're projecting to come in as we hope they would. That's a good thing, even though we're going to be short with recreation and library fees, and short pretty significantly on some of our police revenue, including our impact fees. So We're estimating somewhere around the $1 million mark of shortfall in revenues for this fiscal year. I think we're going to be able to come in okay with the different steps that we've taken to mitigate that, so that we can still come in with a balanced budget bottom line for fiscal year 20. I'm still optimistic that we can do that without the need to borrow or to bring in any money off our balance sheet. I think that we're able to address this with the steps that we've taken in a timely enough manner that we can do this within our current revenue and expenditure items. So again, a lot will depend on how we come in, but I'm optimistic that we had a good period of time with the local options before everything kind of went into place. And I do expect that we'll get some income that will be reasonable, although much lower than what we typically would get from the local options tax. So in a nutshell, I think we're gonna finish the fiscal year okay. We've just got a lot of things that were put on hold to make it happen. And that brings us into the new fiscal year, where we talked a little bit at the last meeting about doing the Dorset Street paving, about $400 worth of paving. Justin had mentioned the possibility of a state grant. We've been informed that the state grant monies are kind of on hold as well, because they don't know what that budget's going to look like. But I think at this point, my understanding from council was to move forward with the Dorset Street paving that would take us to San Remo, which would be about the $400,000, and to put on hold the remainder of that paving money, as well as all the other money within the CIP, at least initially. We could come back to that paving money in the following spring, the spring of 21, if it looked like the budget was going to be okay and we could do some additional paving. But I think it would be wise to kind of freeze most of our capital improvement projects that were passed, and just looking to have a conversation with you about that, so that when I go back to talk to the department managers, we're all on the same page, so to speak. Our capital improvement projects are about $1.2 million. A lot of that was paving, fleet, some project money, some equipment money, and would just like to get your thoughts on at least putting a hold temporarily into the start of the new fiscal year on those expenditures.
Thank you, Tom. So what is your, what are your feelings, council? It sounds like we just do Dorset Street for paving, so we save about 500 million or 500,000.
Yeah, if we took, we'd still be about 800,000 that we would save, or about 1.2 total.
Oh, okay.
So Tom, what you're saying is, what, if I heard that right, no paving at all other than Dorset Street?
At least for the start of the fiscal year, Dave. For this paving season, we would do Dorset Street only. And if we come back in the spring this time next year, and I'm talking to you, hopefully saying that we're going to be okay and that we can afford to do some additional paving projects next spring within the same fiscal year, just not within the same construction season, that we would add those additional projects back in this time next year.
How much is Dorset Street again?
400,000.
So this may be a lousy question to ask, but Dorset Street is bad, but there's a lot of other places that are worse. I'd spend the 400,000 elsewhere and leave Dorset Street, quite honestly. I mean, it's up to you guys and Justin, but there are a lot of places that are worse than Dorset Street. That's just my thinking and an idea. It may be an off the wall idea, but I'm not sure why it might not be considered. I mean, whether it's, you know,
In defense of Dorset,
there's parts of Spear Street, there's parts of,
I wonder if Dorset Street might actually be cheaper now that there's so much reduced traffic due to the pandemic. Because I know one of the reasons why it was so expensive is we had to work on it overnight because it's a high traffic area. All I know is Dorset Street is in dire need of some tender love and care. But I wonder if the cost can be reduced if we were to do more of the construction during regular hours. But I don't know construction.
but I'm not disagreeing at all that it's in dire need of repair. I just think there are some other places where if we took $400,000 and split it among the other really bad places on our city streets, Dorset Street could, as one short segment, can wait another year. It's waited this long.
You gotta remember two things though, is that Dorset Street is the gateway to South Burlington retail. And the local sales option tax that Tom is bemoaning about, right, has got to be regrown after the pandemic is somehow mitigated, so that we can actually bring people back to come to U-Mall, to go to Target, to go to the other places, right, that aren't food, because food doesn't generate any taxes, right?
No, I'm
So
not arguing with you at all. I'm just saying it might be worth taking a look.
I agree.
Maybe the guys have, I don't know.
But you know, Dorset's got two challenges. Dorset has the paving and it's got the traffic lights. And the traffic lights aren't a problem now because there's no traffic. But we've been waiting for several years for adaptive controls on Dorset Street to take care of the traffic flow and optimize it. That's a real key thing that's needed, especially when people start coming back to buy things. It's really great if your car gets to move, you know, efficiently.
No arguments.
It's also nice if you're not in rush too.
No arguments at all. I just raised the point.
Well, Justin is on the call, I think. Is he still
Hey,
on?
Justin.
Yes. Would you like to respond to any of the suggestions?
I think I came in halfway through. So if there's a quick summary, I'd love to. I want to make sure I captured the full spirit of the discussion.
Well, I think the summary was that Tom Hubbard was suggesting that the only paving we would do this summer or season would be Dorset Street for $400,000. So the other $800,000 would not be spent until we have a better understanding of where our finances are, and next paving season we could do that. David suggested that maybe we shouldn't do Dorset Street, but rather look at that $400,000 and do some of the streets in the other streets in the city that are in worse repair.
Yeah, so I guess what we can do, and the best way to evaluate that, is to have, you know, clear identified options to choose from. We certainly can, for the June 1st meeting, if the council would like, present you with an equivalent list of $400,000 of streets that we would otherwise be considering paving that aren't Dorset Street for your consideration.
Can you comment in addition to Tom's thought that maybe it would be cheaper to do it now because there's less traffic and you wouldn't have to do as much of the paving overnight, which is what, time and a half or twice the cost?
Yeah, so for Dorset Street, even with the lower traffic volumes we're experiencing, it's probably less expensive to do it at night, given the delays and the increased traffic control costs that you would incur. If you do it at night, you don't have to manage traffic. You have to put up lights and other safety precautions. So it's honestly probably cheaper to do it at night, regardless.
Okay.
Of volumes.
Justin, I suggested looking at other things, but do you think it's just a dumb idea to begin with? Just say that's a dumb idea and I'll drop it. I don't want to put you guys to the trouble of making a list if you think that doesn't make any sense. I just thought, I said, to me, you know, I've been up and down Dorset Street a zillion times. It's bad, but I thought there's a lot of other places that are short segments that are worse.
Well, in my 24 years of local government, I've never had one idea that wasn't a great idea from a legislative official. And two, we basically already have that list anyway, so you would not be putting an extra burden on staff to prepare that list.
So do you think it makes sense to take a look at it, to just take a look at it?
Yes, that's what he said.
It's your money, sure.
Okay.
Megan?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. All right. So I was just, we may always be right, Justin, but we slow things down. So that's my concern about us kind of getting into that process, is that we would slow things down tremendously.
And we're
'Cause
only
now we're going into June, right? And I was thinking that the RFPs would have already been out, but I guess not.
we continue to advance our Dorset Street design, and you probably saw some invoices on tonight's warrant for that. However, right now the contracting community is extremely hungry. So I don't see 2 weeks as disadvantaging us to continue this discussion whatsoever.
Okay, and then the other question, part of Tom's question was about the trucks, was about the fleet, was it not, Tom?
Correct.
Not renewing the fleet, yeah.
Right.
That would be
That's-
highway, police, additional police cruisers, new police cruisers, putting a halt on all the capital expenditures that were approved. Just keeping in mind that we probably are in the range of about a $2 million, $3 million proposed shortfall for next year, given what the state is projecting right now. So to try to mitigate for that, that would be my recommendation. I have other things that I'll share with you, but I think the CIP one is an important one because it's the amendment that you pass every year. And I just want there to be an understanding that that's a good chunk of money towards the $2 million. We'll continue to put a freeze on the budget, but there's certain line items within that budget that we can't freeze that are just going to happen anyway. The capital improvement plan is something that we can put a hold on, and we know that we can at least reserve that amount of money until the time that we're better able to tell what our finances are and how we might end up at the end of our fiscal year 21. I will say too, Kevin and I and Paul had a meeting with the SBBA, and I know one of their concerns, of course, to Tim's point, was there going to be any additional paving on Dorset Street? And we had said at the time that there was about $400,000 worth of paving planned, and I think we should still move forward with some paving. We had $750,000 approved by the council, with the possibility of getting additional grant money from the state. And Justin, I've already shared with council that you've already been put on notice that those monies just may not be there, that the state can't even tell us that at this point. So it was more than cutting that in half.
So what is your pleasure? Do you want to get this other list of roads to pave, or do you want to take the advice of our very able deputy city manager and city manager?
I say take the advice, but if there's any kind of work you could do on Spear Street, that'd be great.
I couldn't understand that, Tim.
So
I don't quite understand, Tim. You want us to do the Dorset and then?
Yeah, do the Dorset, but if you can do some repairs on Spear to make it better than it is now, then the bicyclists would appreciate it. And we're just talking UVM to Swift. I think that's all we're talking about.
Is there any is there any money in the budget to do, like fill potholes and do some of the real corrective issues that you can't just wait another 8 months or 12 months? Justin?
Yeah, we have in our operating budget, that's where we deal with those types of things. And Kevin and Tom have instructed us to continue with those repairs because that need doesn't go away, and it's quite the nuisance. And it's not a large volume of money like the capital money is. So we continue to do that, be it Spear Street or elsewhere.
Okay.
You know,
Well,
I
that's good
didn't
to know.
open a can of worms on the $400,000. I just wanted to raise the question in case it made sense to take a look at it. Personally, I don't care. Whatever's going to be most efficient, most cost effective, and work best. And I'm not the expert, Justin. You are. So it's whatever you think.
Well, I think they've made a recommendation that we go with just Dorset to begin with. I think it makes sense if it's supportive of the SBBA. I think in this economy, any little thing we can do that looks to support small business is something really positive.
Fine by me. Let's do that. Sorry, I brought the question up.
No, it's a good conversation.
Worth asking, but I think we've had a good discussion. Let's do Dorset I think we've come to a consensus on that. Let's go.
Are there any other comments or questions or concerns? Megan?
The street sweeping, has that been done at all?
Yeah, we have, I don't know if we've 100% completed, but we started our street sweeping probably 5 weeks ago.
Okay.
Again, I don't know if we've hit every curb street, but generally at this point in that effort, we would have done both South Burlington and Shelburne, who we contract with.
Okay, wow. I would say there's streets around me that don't look like they've been swept. So
Okay, it's entirely possible. I can look into where we stand in the Chamberlain neighborhood with sweeping.
okay, all right, thanks.
All righty. Any other questions or comments on the April financials? Okay, thank you, Tom.
Thanks,
It's a
Helen.
tough road and a lot of stresses and a lot of juggling, but I believe that you're doing a really thoughtful job, and I know it's hard for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do feel good where I think we'll end up with this fiscal year, but it's involved taking a number of steps to cut spending on things that just aren't going to be able to get done. But I think we're going to be okay. Pretty confident with that decision for this fiscal year. A little bit more nervous about next year.
For sure. Okay, thank you. Well, let's move on then to item 13, which is our review and possible adoption of a resolution related to the wearing of face coverings in public places. And as we discussed this at the last meeting and asked management to pull together with some legal advice, some mechanism to deal with requiring people to wear face masks, and we appear to have two options. So who would like to share this with us?
I move
Kevin?
we adopt the second resolution.
Well, Andrew's also on the line, Helen. But by way of background, Andrew had written a resolution. We had discussed the authority of the city to do this on our own, and we felt that the city charter did not allow us the authority to mandate the wearing of masks. And so Andrew prepared a resolution that was more of a encouragement until Friday, when Governor Scott came out with his new executive order, the amendment number 14, and it says the legislative body of each municipality may enact more strict local requirements regarding mask use than those set forth herein. seemingly giving the communities under his emergency powers the authority to do something that was stronger than just encouragement. And so I modified the resolution, and that's resolution 2 that Tim just endorsed, to make it put the onus on the owners of public spaces to require masks in those spaces. And so, Andrew, do you want to weigh in a little bit on the legal side here? Because I have not, other than that one sentence in his addendum, I've not seen where the governor is extending us this authority. But anyway, Andrew, do you want to talk about it?
Sure, Kevin. Yeah, I think it goes back a little bit to the memo I prepared for you before the last council meeting, just about our general authority. And I don't think that the governor's executive order really grants us, it may give us a little comfort when it comes to the liability side of things, even though I don't think there's a lot of liability in pursuing a resolution like this. And I think as far as enforcement goes, I still think it's a real challenge and a real question how we would go about enforcing a resolution like this, even if we were to put it into a city ordinance and go through that process. So really, it will come out a little bit more, I think, like a political statement, but I don't think it does have some weight to it, and I think a little bit more weight because of the governor's order.
Kevin, did you have a chance to ask the SBBA what they thought about us requiring people going into businesses to wear a mask?
I did not, Helen. When we met with the SBBA, this kind of phantom authority from the governor did not exist. They did talk about it a little bit. I think they felt that they were all willing to make that decision on their own. I asked Heather about it as it related to the mall, and she said that they were going to strongly encourage people entering the mall to wear masks, and that they would have masks for people if they didn't bring them with them, but they were not going to mandate it.
Huh.
Chair Lee.
Yes, Tom.
So I sent some questions to Kevin beforehand, and he forwarded it to everybody before the meeting, but there are still concerns in that. I fully support people wearing face masks, and I am not worried about infringing on people's constitutional rights. I just want to do this right, and my concerns are outlined in that question, in that email, if you all want to look at it. But in one of Kevin's responses, this lacks teeth, so it lacks clarity as to what the consequences are. So are they going to get a fine? Are they going to be arrested? And also the concern is, are people going to start calling the cops on their neighbors whenever they're out and about without a face mask? And is that going to burden our police officers, putting our police officers out for calls? So and the last question that I outlined in there is I'm wondering if this second resolution gives any more weight than if we just make sure that businesses know that they can require masks the same way they can require shirts and shoes. My understanding from Kevin's response is that this doesn't change how much we can actually do in a circumstance where somebody isn't wearing a shirt or isn't wearing a mask. Either of these resolutions, the abilities of our officers are still the same. I'm fully supportive of Resolution 1. I just find Resolution 2 lacks too much ambiguity. It also doesn't address exceptions. So in the governor's statement too, and Kevin's note, it talks about how there are going to be people with valid medical issues where they can't have a face mask on them, but they still might have to be out in public. So there are concerns I have with the second resolution. I'm on board with requiring it, but I want to do it right and not expose us to more problems and so on. So I'm fully yes on Resolution 1, but for Resolution 2, I'd want to hear from Chief Burke what his thoughts are on this, and if he would want to add any language before I could vote yes on the second version. But that's just me.
I can tell you,
Go ahead.
Chief Burke does not want to be in the business of arresting people for not wearing face coverings.
Oh, yes, of course.
And
I can understand that.
Yeah.
So I could be yes on version 2 if we just added some language that put Chief Burke at ease. Other than that, I'm fully on board for resolution version 1, but resolution 2 I don't think is quite ready for prime time. So I'm not a yes on resolution 2.
So how does that differ when the first resolution in the first resolved rather in the first resolution says that any member of the public entering a city-owned building must wear a PPE face covering. If we follow your logic, then how can we insist on that? And what happens when they say, I'm not wearing one because X, Y, and Z?
That's us, and we control the policy, and I have confidence enough in Tom and Kevin to always be reasonable on this and to not unduly call the police on anybody stepping into a city space without a face mask. So that's where I'm comfortable still with the first version, because I know that we have some authority and some trust in Kevin and Tom in that execution. So that's where I see the difference, Helen.
But the businesses would have the same option, right? I mean, they could run into the same problems, and when one would hope that they would be reasonable and thoughtful about how they manage.
And they have that with both versions.
The businesses do. Well, then why aren't you supporting 2 that says they've got to?
For the reasons stated. So if it comes out that you have to wear a face mask in South Burlington, even if you have a medical problem, or if you don't have the mask, or if it doesn't fit because of, or if you have a business like a jeweler, or if you are a gas station open from 11 p.m. until 5 a.m. and you want to not allow masks because there's security concerns. There was an article in the Burlington Free Press this week about that. I'm not ready to endorse this second resolution until Chief Burke weighs in on this. And from Kevin's response, he has serious concerns, or not, I don't know, I didn't say serious, but he has concerns about that second version. I could be a yes on the second resolution. I just would want to hear from Chief Burke and to resolve that open-ended question in Kevin's response.
Kevin or maybe Andrew, with the first resolve in both of them, that if you come into a city-owned building, you must wear a mask. That will also be if we pass this, will be in effect for the special election on the 28th.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Well, I think the special election will be in school district-owned properties. But I think you're correct, Helen, that if they're coming in, I don't know how we're setting up absentee ballots, Kevin, with Donna, but if they are coming in the front door, then it absolutely would be part of that. So they'd have to have a mask when they come in.
I mean, just into City Hall. So
Right.
We can't require that at the school
That would be a school district
during an
decision.
election.
Yeah, that would be a school district decision. We're not, Donna may have stated, I didn't hear it. Donna's not planning to have early voting. This year, it's going to be absentee ballots, or it's going to be voting on-site election day. So that's in an effort to not have people come into City Hall. However, our plan is to have masks available if and when we do open City Hall. But as the owners of City Hall, we can set the requirements for our building.
Okay, so since the election is in the schools, we don't have any say. Yeah. So I, as a poll worker, am just stuck.
Well, I think Donna's been working with Justin to come up with plans to make modifications to the polling place to protect poll workers.
Sure.
And I think it's still a little bit of an open question. I know the Board of Civil Authorities petitioning the Secretary of State in some ways right now to try and get that decision reversed.
Okay.
Only other thing I want to say on this is I'm doing the Counselor's Corner, which is due this week, and the title of it's gonna be "Please Wear Face Masks." So wear face masks. That's my theme. So for whatever that's worth, my Counselor's Corner, I'm writing it now, is wear your face masks. I'm also wearing. Indeed.
Tell them, especially when they go and vote.
I like that. I will do that.
Well, no, because you've got all these volunteers. Well, I mean, maybe we're paid a little bit, but public members, many of whom are in the older category, and we're more at risk. Working the polls, and if you don't have people working the polls, you don't have an election.
Just change the title, especially when you vote. So hopefully, Maddie, you'll publish that.
Okay. Any other thoughts, comments? Tim, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that, this is not an ordinance, this is a resolution. The spirit of the resolution is to protect the health of not only the citizens of South Burlington, but the visitors as well. I don't have any expectation that the police are going to be involved in people who won't wear a mask. I think that the businesses where people try to enter, if the business decides they're going to require masks. I mean, we can't, this is a statement by city council about the importance of wearing masks in public places inside buildings. So, in businesses. So, I mean, they both get the job done. I would prefer that we say require. I would like to pass one of these two tonight if we could.
Okay.
They both have the same result. It's not an ordinance. It's not really enforceable. It's strong language that shows our commitment to good health, good public health.
Well, do we have, someone want to make
I'm
a
a yes.
motion?
I'm a yes on resolution 1 tonight, and then if you want to come back with resolution 2 as this pandemic proceeds, if we just get greater clarity from Chief Burke or anybody else, and I'd love to explore it further for that requirement piece. I just want to do it right, and I just don't feel like this addresses the exceptions for the businesses like that are a jeweler or a bank or so on, as well as the medical issues that the governor included in his dictate.
So are you making a motion to approve resolution 1, I guess it is?
I will make a motion to approve resolution 1.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. And
Okay.
And I have to, say I come down on, I do somewhat agree with Tom that without having a sense of what that requirement, were someone to break with that requirement, what the consequences would be, I think that we would potentially be setting ourselves up with resolution 2 for just some confusion on the part of the public. And I think with resolution 1, we avoid that confusion, but yet, just like Tim said, we really set a tone. And I think that, just speaking with family members and hearing what's happening in different states, Vermont is doing pretty well in terms of individuals respecting their neighbors' health and realizing that it's not just for my protection, it's for everybody's protection. And I'm not saying we're at 100%. So any kind of strong statement like this, I think, can only boost and create a tone. So I will second the motion.
Okay, is there further discussion?
Just a minor question. On the second, be it further resolved that it is strongly encouraged that all city business or all city businesses?
It looks like it should be businesses.
It should be plural, businesses. Good catch.
Should be businesses, right?
And nonprofits, yes.
Thank you, Dave.
That's my professor coming through. So somebody fix that.
Oh. Yep. So that we could add that as a friendly amendment or a typo correction. So are you ready for the vote?
Sure.
Okay, all in favor, I'll call the roll. All in favor of the resolution 1 that says that they must wear them in city-owned properties, and we strongly encourage them in all other properties. Let's see, Tom Chittenden?
Aye.
Tim Barrett?
Aye.
Megan Emery?
Aye.
Dave Kaufman?
Aye.
And Tim Barrett, excuse me.
I thought you already got me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. And the chair votes yes, so we pass resolution 1 5-0. Thank you very much.
And I just want to say, I'm sorry for the other paper that there's no juicy quote for me tonight on this.
Oh, gosh. I too.
I'll give you one.
Okay,
Wear
item
your damn
14.
face masks. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Any reports from counselors on committee assignments? Tom, did you have your hand raised?
I did not. I have DMT tomorrow morning, and I am planning to be done after the June meeting. So I'm really hoping this body's going to appoint somebody soon. If you need my official resignation, I will get that to you this week. And I'm still hopeful that one of the people on this call right here will be that person. But we transition for the July meeting, so that's when we have new board members come on. So
Okay. So we should make that a item for our next meeting, perhaps. Okay, good. Alrighty. I don't have anything to report. Pension, anything? Okay.
Well, the market's
Is-
up. It was up today.
Yeah, right. I know. It was a big day today.
Don't get used to it.
Yeah, exactly. Is there any other business to come before the city council? Okay, I would, do we have to do an amendment or a motion to go into executive session, or is that a whole nother meeting? I keep getting confused about when you're on, when it's a new phone call, what's the protocol? Do we adjourn and then the public knows we're going into executive session?
Helen, why don't you make the motion, have the motion made to go into executive session now, then adjourn, and just say that in the motion that you're going into executive session after the meeting adjourns.
Okay. So
I need a link for that next meeting. I don't know where it is.
I do too.
I do 3.
So Paul sends out
Do you have it?
the meeting object in your calendar. So if you look in
Oh,
your
that's right.
calendar, then you'll
So
find it.
I know, but my calendar's not on my laptop. It's only on my phone. So I will be joining on my phone. Unless I get the link sent to my home address, I can't do it. So I'm happy to join by phone. You just won't see me. So I would entertain a motion to go into executive session with, to discuss pending or probable civil litigation to which the public body may be a party, and confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to counsel. And along with the counsel, we'll have Kevin and Tom.
And Paul and Justin and Colin.
Okay,
So moved.
Paul and McNeil.
Um,
So the motion's been made. Is it seconded? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
All right.
Now, how am I going to find that meeting? Sorry.
I just resent it to everybody as a straight email. So you should have
Thank
it
you.
momentarily. Justin, I'll send it to you also momentarily.
Did
Can
you
you,
send
this is
it-
Colin McNeil. Can you also
Yep,
send
I'll
it to me?
you also, Colin.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Right.
a motion to, everyone has it, and a motion to adjourn
So moved.
has been made. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, aye,
Aye.
aye. Okay,
Aye.
we'll see you in a few minutes. Thank you.
Okay.
Everybody take care.
How do I get out?